welcome to Geeking Out at the Tower podcast. I'm your host, Andrew, and today I'm joined by...
Kevin.
Peter.
Awesome, and it's a slow news week, so I guess we should just get right into the news. So it seems that Target, Sony, and a clothing store named Mex, just throwing that out there, are all closing down operations in Canada. These are primarily, I guess, American companies that had opened Canadian branches over the last years and have decided this year to file for bankruptcy here in Canada, and thus will be closing all their operations down by the end of the year.
I think Sony's been here for a bit. Target was just like last year, and they took over all the Zellers or branches, and that apparently fell through.
For all the non-Canadian listeners, think of Zellers as like shittier Target.
Kmart. Used to be a Kmart.
Basically.
Which is interesting because basically Walmart gets more of a dominion now in the Canadian market. So it'll be interesting how that affects prices and affects kind of stock. But like Target was having a hard time getting like any of the decent items. And I'm not just talking about like clothing and their stuff, but like even the electronics, even like the toys and stuff like that. You literally walk across the street to this to the other store, and they would like beat the prices immediately. So
it's not really the prices that were the issue. That was one of the issues. The problem is that they never had enough stock on their shelves.
Yeah, that was the other thing. That was
and I know
really
they couldn't get the stuff they got from like the US ones, I guess because of reasons, but it just felt like they weren't even like stocking up on the stuff they already had. If you have a ton of stuff, just put it all on the shelf. Because every time I walked into a Target, it always felt like it was empty.
And for the Sony store, I mean, last time I went there, you look at the prices, it's like I could literally go to Future Shop and everything there is better priced.
I honestly think like closing down the Sony store will have no effect here on anything, because the only time I've ever seen people go into a Sony store is to window shop. I tried going in there getting some random stuff. I saw the prices. I'm like, nope, I am out of here.
Yeah, everything at Future Shop is a better price. Everything at Walmart is a better price. So it'll be interesting what gets sort of replaced, if anything does, but
They'll probably replace it with one of those random bag shops like they always replace these.
Oh, jeez,
those locations that closed down.
Now opening another Ardennes.
Oh, jeez.
Well, they do make their money. And in very more important news, the Lego Movie was snubbed for Best Animated Feature Film at the 2015 Oscar nominations. And that upsets me because it was definitely not only one of the best animated movies to come out this year, but just a great movie to come out this year.
Who won it?
No one's won it yet. It was just the nominations.
Oh.
Like, they weren't even nominated.
Oh, boo.
So other things that were nominated in its place were Big Hero 6, good movie. I still don't think it was better than the Lego Movie. The Box Trolls, haven't seen it, not interested really in seeing it.
I heard it was pretty bad.
I've heard okay things. I think it's just because it comes from the creators of Coraline and Paranorman, which were better films.
I think it's also because it's stop motion, right?
Yeah,
that's why.
So probably that too. Then How to Train Your Dragon 2, which I also didn't see.
Winner.
I don't think it's going to win.
I don't think it's going to win either.
I think it might go to...
Didn't they actually announce the winners? Or
No, that's just the nominations. The Oscars are like in a month or two.
Okay.
They're like in February, March, or something like that. Maybe even April. I don't remember when. But they're basically... Actually, they might be next month. Oscars are later. Then there was Song of the Sea. I haven't heard much about it, but I heard it was a decent movie. And then we have the Studio Ghibli's The Tale of Princess Kaguya, which is probably in here because it is Disney / Ghibli.
Yeah.
Well, it's really Ghibli, but Disney also has that pull here. In my opinion, I think Box Trolls could have probably been taken out and put in the Lego Movie, because the Lego Movie essentially achieves... It's okay, so it's not actually stop motion, but it achieves all the greatness of stop motion, but digitally. It was a story that interested me a lot more. Maybe that's my bias, but I think it was a big snub because it was a really good movie for like families. And I think that's what you look for in animated films when you think about it.
I'll agree with you on that for an animated film point of view. But the fact of the matter is we're talking about the Oscars. The Oscars aren't exactly the most reasonable in choosing their winners. They tend to go more with like art style or some more adult terms.
Well, they're very much more drama-based. Like, they're more into that. And animated feature films, they feel like it is more for kids kind of thing. I mean, there are a few movies that have broken out of that mold to some extent, like Beauty and the Beast, which was the first animated film to be nominated for Best Movie Oscar. It was a great movie, and even now it's in, I think, the American Film Archives as being culturally significant. And I don't think the Lego Movie is per se culturally significant. I'm not going that far either. But I think in a year of the animated movies, which were, I think, overall good animated movies, but not great, and for, like, the truly great animated movie to be snubbed completely is, like, I think worse than, like, then like a lot of the other things, like, how it's all white men and white women for Best Actor and Actress this year. You know what? There was a lot of really good performances. That one's more forgivable. But this, it's like you're saying it's like not even considering Michael Jordan for, like, MVP. Okay, maybe that's a bit for MVP.
Extreme. The thing
extreme,
is,
but yeah.
The Oscars have always been really snobby, and if you look at the Lego Movie compared to all these other animated movies that made the cut, from the outside it looks like product placement. It looks like a very dumb story, but obviously if you watch it, you see there's so many different themes, and you can write entire papers on this movie. It's very smart, and very intelligent.
And I think that's where it's exactly what's happening, is that the movie, although very, like, product placey-ish, and I mean, it's been hinted already, because that's kind of how they started. They brought back the whole Simpsons line as well. It was start from there, and they made an episode in The Simpsons after using the same engine. But the whole movie, although had a good story behind it, mostly felt like it was a big product hit. Although very powerful, and, like, very good story, very funny. I actually watched it in New Year's. I think comparative to the other ones had a full kind of storyline. They had a full a full plan of what it was, without being too, like, and here's the writers of Dragons, woo, like, sort of placement stuff. So I think that might be where it is, but I do agree with you. I think it's very, like, picked per, like, just the flavor of what they want, and they're like, that's too childish, or that's not serious enough, and then just, like, kind of shove it aside. Hey, maybe the Lego Movie 2 will make it in the runs later.
That would bother me if it was a lesser film, but that hasn't come out yet. And chances are it might actually be an even greater film. We've seen, because it's the same guys who did, like I mentioned last time, 22 Jump Street, Clone High, Honey with a Chance of Meatballs. And with 22 Jump Street, I've heard that, and I'm still have yet to see the movie, which annoys me. The sequel is even, like, better than the first, so they can do it.
Especially the after credits scene, that was amazing.
Yeah. So I'm sad about this. This really annoys me. Unfortunately, I can't do anything about it. I don't have a genie to wish it back in.
That's what you would use your wish on?
Anyway, any other news you guys would like to bring up?
Not really, no.
Awesome. So join us in the next segment where we'll be geeking around.
Hey, this is Anthony Bowling, voices of such characters as Yuka in Fairy Tail, Ukyo in Samurai 7, and Alciel in The Devil is a Part-Timer, along with many, many more. And right now you are listening to Geeking Out at the Tower podcast.
And we're back. This is the Geeking Around segment where we talk about things geeky or otherwise going around in the geekosphere. So, Peter, what have you been up to?
I recently marathoned 2 superhero type shows. One is, I guess, fairly recent. The other one has been around for 2 years. I both watched The Awesomes and Tiger and Bunny for the first time.
What is The Awesomes?
The Awesomes is this Hulu exclusive. It's kind of a Flash animated show. And it's mostly the cast of SNL who's doing all these characters. To actually give you a quick summation, what the story is, it's about, and it's actually kind of funny that I watched both these shows recently because they're kind of similar. General world, there are people with superpowers, they're kind of like celebrities. There's this team called The Awesomes, with Mr. Awesome being the guy in charge. He's like the Superman analog for this universe. And the story starts off with him retiring and him having to pass down the torch of the team. And there's his son, Proc, who is, by all accounts, very injury prone and has none of the powers his dad has, and all he just wants to do is be a superhero. But he does have the power to stop time, but this is mostly used in the same fashion as, Zach from Saved by the Bell.
Time out!
Pretty much, yeah, he can stop time like that. It's a really good show. Essentially, Proc takes over the team, but when that happens, everyone else on the team leaves, so then the government cuts their funding unless they can replace the entire roster. So the entire roster is made up of, I guess, reject characters. So you have one guy called Impreciado, something like that, and he's essentially what it is. He's this guy with real intense mother issues. Like,
That's a superpower? Oh, God.
Well, the thing is, I think I saw a bit of the first episode a while back. Essentially, they all have really awesome superpowers, but they all have this one mental deficiency that renders them not great to the team, which is why they were rejected in the first place. So they all have like really good superpowers.
This guy in Pasztor, he has mother issues. He basically has the same powers as the Green Lantern. He can conjure things out of energy, but everything he conjures looks like his mother.
And and it has her voice.
Exactly. So he'll make like a giant dragon. It's like, ooh, I'm a dragon now, baby. And then there's Speedster, who is, as they put it in the show, batshit crazy. You have this little Asian boy, when he gets mad, turns into a giant sumo wrestler.
Yes, that's like the best version of a Hulk if I ever heard one.
Voiced by Bobby Lee.
Oh, jeez, never mind.
Then you have Muscle Man, who is, well, just muscle. He has no brain whatsoever. You have Gadget Gal, who is a girl from the 1940s.
Who has gadgets?
Yeah, like all gadgets from back in the day. It's hilarious. Okay. She's the old type caricature character who's still very racist, but it was a different time back then. And their villain is called Malocchio, and he is by far one of the funniest characters in the show. Like, for example, he's cursing that he's been defeated again. And then his henchman comes in, sir, we couldn't get that stain out of your sweater. Damn it, can this day get any worse? Quick, take me to the Gap and let's hope they did not discontinue that sweater.
Oh, boy.
It's a pretty good show, Hulu exclusive. It's about 2 seasons in right now, and it's a very smart superhero show. I really enjoy it, and I really look forward to season 3. And also, I've been watching Tiger and Bunny.
So worth it!
Oh, God, I had a lot of fun with that show. I watched it down with my friend, and we just saw 2-3 episodes, and they're like, okay, let's start Parasite now. And we kept watching Tiger and Bunny. And then it's 2 a.m. and we're still watching Tiger and Bunny.
Tiger Bunny is a very good series. I've only seen the dub. I think there's a subtitle, but I've only seen the dub.
Of course, there's a subtitle.
But it's so good. Basically, superheroes are treated like TV stars. Are being recorded, and they get graded in points. They're given they're tallied points. At the end, you've got major companies backing them. So, like, their uniforms are all like... what's that main guy?
They're like race cars. They're just basically plastered with ads.
But no, I think what you're referring to is like the main guy from Mystery Men.
Yeah, like just full of like ads everywhere.
Like in the opening scene, like that girl is drinking a Pepsi every time.
Yeah, so it's really product placement, but it's also really good. I would almost say it's like a very futuristic, like Trigun level of like just like dubbing, how they did the storyline, how it worked really well. So worth it. I'm glad you brought that up. That's such a good show. I saw it last year.
There's a few like things they did in that show which I really enjoyed. I like some of the character dynamics, like Tiger and Bunny. They're really fun characters, but one thing I really liked was how the main character was a single father who's doing all this. His dream is he wants his kids to think he's cool. And one of the reasons why I haven't been watching so many animes lately is because they're just the same old main character tropes over and over again. It was a little refreshing to have an older gentleman who's a father and his journey, and like, well, I'm being phased out by the new generation, but then he helps him, he helps the other guy, and they just become a great team, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, actually, funny story about the ad. You say that this is like, it's nice to get something like that. This is like right smack dab in like the height of the moification of anime on the most part. It's also done by Bandai, who tends to do a lot more of these like robotic and mecha like.
I think you can pretty much figure out it's from Bandai. Some characters have Bandai written on their chest.
A lot of the companies, like there's some that are fake companies, but a lot of the companies are actual companies. From what I remember, like the Domino's, obviously, Pepsi, SoftBank,
Figure Arts.
Yeah, but there are also some fake companies in there. But yeah,
I just love the fact that the two main characters have advertising from Bandai and Figure Arts, and those are probably the first toys they're gonna put out. One thing I will say was I wish they made Tiger's armor look more like an actual tiger.
Okay, I will actually want to bring this up. I really like the show. I hated that these superheroes were like, oh, we're also going to give them super messed up armor that's freaking awesome. There's a big, I'm not going to spoil it, there was a big premise later on, and it's just like, who cares? You have a super armor! You're essentially Tony Stark, a la Duel, who has these awesome armor things. You don't really he basically just made a superhero without the abilities. And it's like, I don't care what other, like, power you have that sort of works with it. That drove me crazy, because then it pulled away a bit off their power, while everyone else still had their powers. And yeah, Tiger and Bunny, it's like, yeah, but we've got mecha suits, so we're good.
That's the thing, like, Tiger and Bunny really get the shaft on powers because theirs only lasts, like, 5 minutes max, and then they need an hour to recharge while everyone else has them permanently.
But even at that, they used it wisely, but then that's why they had the armor thing, too. So it's like, that aspect, I got my pet peeve in, and then I was like, okay, gonna enjoy this series, and I did.
To continue on, what I really enjoyed about the story was actually its villains. That's the season 1 and season 2 villains. I think season 2 had the more smart villain, while season 1 had the more like chaotic, really anger-driven villain.
That's the way like you wanted to kill each of them, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. The villains were really well done. I liked it. I like how they were going about it. Again, just such a good show.
And I feel like, man, that show could have gone on further. I think it ended well. I just would have maybe changed what happens with Tiger and Bunny at the end, but that's just my pet peeve.
And then I like that at one point they did a OVA where it was sort of how the two like were able to work together. Like they just immediately implied it in the show that they're just like, yep, they finally just realized it. But they had a good episode where like how the two really like how they saw each other and how it worked really well in the end. And that OVA did a good job.
Was that the beginning OVA or the epilogue OVA?
I think it was the beginning.
Okay, because essentially isn't that just episodes 1 and 2 redone?
No, they did, but then they added a whole like 30 minutes of additional content to it.
All right, cool. I'll check it out.
Yeah, so worth it.
I like the movie, that final OVA movie. And I love how, like, even one of the characters, you know, like, Golden something, what was his name again? The guy who had the gravity power.
I can't remember.
And, like, they write him to be this gigantic jackass. Like, you think if we're going anime tropes, yeah, he's going to pull a 180 and he's going to be the villain at the end of the story. And then, like, he actually turns to Bunny and says, "You thought I was secretly the villain, didn't you?"
No,
Isn't your face red? And he was actually a pretty chill guy. You know, he was a bit of an egocentric guy, but, you know, he still fought with the team. Overall, really enjoyed Tiger and Bunny. Really enjoyed The Awesomes, too. I would highly recommend both shows.
Tiger Bunny, definitely. I watched, they had just released the Justice League Throne of Atlantis. This was, I think it's another movie based right after the Justice League, I think it was a War?
Justice League War. They're the
Same,
new 52 movie.
Yeah, same art style, kind of building off from the last movie and how all those characters got built together, except this one surrounds the whole Atlantis being involved in it, dealing with Mantis, and then obviously Aquaman.
Mantis?
Yeah, he's involved in the movie.
Manta, or you mean Black Manta?
Yeah, sorry, Black Manta. The movie was good, except like some of the way that they're designing or pushing some of the storyline was a little meh. Like they tried to put everybody in it, but it was essentially like an Aquaman movie that they sort of like, oh yeah, and then there's these other guys. It's like you remember that thing that happened in the last movie? They're still doing it. It was a good watch, but it was not strong at all. I found it was mainly a love letter to Aquaman. They're like I feel like they're really trying to push. Like, pull away from the stereotype of Aquaman just being like, yeah, he's just a silly little whatever.
We can use whales!
I feel they're trying to really push it, so I don't know if are they planning to do a spin-off, or are they trying to do like another like CW or whatever show with that?
Aquaman? No, that got canceled before it even got out of the water, pardon the pun, way early on.
The only reason that episode did well is because the actress who played Lois Lane was in a bikini that time.
Yeah. Oh shit, that was true. She was well drawn.
Oh yeah.
No, not drawn.
Built.
No, Aquaman is not in the picture right now.
Actually, you know what? Now that you mention, you know what this Aquaman movie reminds me of? The second story arc from the Justice League cartoon. Right after they finish up the whole alien invasion thing in that cartoon, they did 2 episodes about Aquaman.
Yes.
It is literally the same thing all over again. It's like, hey, yeah, my brother's trying to usurp the throne and take over the world by blowing it up. And the Justice League so happens to be here at the same time to save the day.
So yeah, I'm just curious what they're gonna do, but it really feels like they're really trying to push the Aquaman like story plot or something like that. They're like, yeah, this is a really, really great idea, I swear. I don't know.
No, but you kind of have that in comics where you have the joining of the team and then you have another arc about a whole new character. The only problem with this is it's right after the last movie and we haven't even had a chance to fully develop some of the characters. Like, I love in the New 52, Shazam wasn't part of the founding of the Justice League. He joined them like years later in the comics. But he is one of my favorite things in these movies. I just love the guy. But you watch the second movie, he only has a few lines every here and there.
Like, the only thing that I liked, I found kind of a chuckle is you like immediately have Wonder Woman and Superman kind of dating, and it's like, I've got a great idea for an alternate your alternate ego or whatever, and it's like glasses, and it's like, oh geez, really? Is it? And then like immediately they're in a diner, and Lois Lane just shows up, and he's like, ugh! And she's like, yep, this was totally a date. What the fuck?
My thing is that I honestly feel the romance between Superman and Wonder Woman is forced. Aside from them seeing each other as hot, like, what do they even have in common?
No, I can understand the two making sense, and maybe a little bit more if it was starting like immediately into like a story plot, because they have similarities where they're larger than life than the common folk. And they're the only two like that can understand in similarities what they have to deal with compared to like comparing like Clark Kent and Lois Lane. Like maybe there's the love, the interest, the stuff, but like you can't really be like, oh, you don't understand, you can't deflect bullets, and it's just like...
I'm going to have to disagree with you a bit on that, because for Clark, yes, because he hasn't met anyone else like him on the planet, but Diana comes from the Amazons, and she actually knows the Greek pantheon of gods. These are people who are as powerful as her, if not stronger than her. She is surrounded by people of that type of power level, and she just out of nowhere meets Clark, who's like, oh my god, somebody else like me.
And a male.
Yeah. But the fact of the matter is that personality-wise, these two characters are so different. One is like a battle-hardened warrior who is willing to kill her enemies, and the other one's the Boy Scouts. After you get past the initial attraction and similarities, these two characters have nothing in common, but they're always trying to force them together in the comics and even in media.
It's because when they break up, it's going to be an event.
There's Half-Earth.
There you go. It'll be like, what is it? In, like the Infinite Crisis, isn't it? No, not Infinite Crisis. Flashpoint Paradox. Where, you know, Flash goes and he changes time, and in the new future, Aquaman and Wonder Woman, well, Wonder Woman was the mistress, sort of, and she, like, basically kills Aquaman's wife, and then they go into war!
Decapitation.
So, obviously, they're planning some big event, maybe, with the breakup of Clark and Diana.
No, they've been trying to do this in DC Comics for years. They've been trying to push them and get Lois out of the picture. It's never worked to me, and even in this movie, they're trying to allude to it, but even in the last movie where they showed it off a bit.
Although the Kryptonian and Amazon baby that they would make would be like, holy shit. Anyway, so there's that, and then I've just been going over a lot of the new anime that's been popping up in
Winter
this
season 2015.
Yeah, so a lot of shows that I enjoyed in, I think it was the spring, have come back, so I'm enjoying that, one of which is Kuroko no Basket, so they're in season 3 now. There's Aldnoah Zero for the second season, and then Tokyo Ghoul second season. So I'm really enjoying that those are back. Of course, I'm still kind of watching the bunches that are still ongoing. So Log Horizon, World Trigger. So no, I'm still enjoying a lot of what's coming out, and I think there's a few ones.
I'm glad they're finally releasing World Trigger on, it seems, a more weekly basis.
Yeah, that's true.
Because initially it was going weirdly slow, like they were releasing the first few episodes every 2 weeks, it felt like.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing's still happening. Feels like they were about to make something big happen, and now it's just kind of stuff. But I did like what they did with the last episode, how they were explaining the different types of triggers while a battle was going on simultaneously with the exact same trigger somewhere else. So it's like, oh, there's this type of trigger. And so that was an interesting way of doing it. It's definitely a budget anime, so you can see where they're trying to cut corners here and there, but at least what they're doing, and it's still pretty decent. Another one I want to throw out there from the 2015 season that is just crack, like pure crack. It's Cute High Earth Defense Club Love.
You mentioned that last time, didn't you?
Yes, it's the Magical Boys anime. For the last few weeks, a clip of the transformation sequence of the guys who kiss their pendants and go love making. It has a very, how would I put it, Sailor Moonish feel. So they give them all the Sailor Moon-like transformation, but it's 5 dudes, and it's played completely straight if you just watch the sequence. But if you actually watch the rest of the episode, they are doing this against their will. So one of them is like, I don't get why we're doing this, and starts doing a we will save the earth pose, and then all the friends will subsequently start doing different save the earth poses or protector of the earth poses as they go along, as they're trying to say, wait, why are you saying things like that? I will also save the earth because it is awesome. And so it has a lot of those tropes that are playing along with, while also being very meta about it. When they use their attacks, it's like something or other beam. Or, I am so awesome attack. I'm gonna show you a clip of it during the break. I think you're gonna find it hilarious. It's like Oranai Host Club, I feel like, in terms of parody, but even more meta. So it feels like it's finally coming, like Japan has come into that 20th century mentality with that kind of comedy in this one. Just throwing that out there, it is not for everybody, but I think it's just crack, period.
Cool. So that's all I have to talk about.
So I'm just going to run down a few of the shows I've been watching because I was catching up for this week's topic, which is Korra, but I was watching a whole bunch of like shows that have been coming back from the mid-season breaks or the winter short 2-week break. So The Librarians is the show I talked about last week. This week was the season finale, for season 1. It was a good season finale. It played very much like how you think it would. So there's a lot of fan theories about who certain characters were. Some were like, maybe they're being deliberately clever to trick you, or the way they said this might mean something else. And it's like, no, it's exactly what you thought it was. We're not even going to go there from you. We're just going to be like, you are so-and-so. Oh, well, so much for that. But it was actually a fun show. The character development is great. My only issue with the ending of season 1 is that it feels like I don't know where they're going to go with it. And I'm hoping it's like one of those things where either in season 2 they're going to introduce a whole bunch of new characters that are very interesting as well as the old cast, or they're going to make the old cast back to that same kind of feeling from season 1, but at least evolve them a bit more. I don't want to spoil what happens at the end, but good show, very fun. It's very sci-fi fantasy and how it goes along with everything. It's very classic. It's fun, it's campy, it still does some of the drama very well. And it's so over-the-top acting on so many parts. It's good. Face Off is back. Like the X10th, 50th X season of Face Off is here. So they're definitely doing something different. So they brought back 3 previous winners and they're coaches now. And they have teams. Whoever person wins at the end, that coach also wins a prize also as well.
I really gotta get...
You don't have to catch up on Face Off.
No.
It's one of those shows that you either watch it while it's going on...
Because I saw some episodes, I mentioned it before, and it's really interesting and it's really good, but I'd be like, yeah, I'm going to watch this, and then completely forget about it.
I just got to ask one thing. How is Nicolas Cage involved in this?
Not at all.
All right, we need you to make the best Nicolas Cage costume. All right, done.
Just new season. Just start watching now.
Okay.
I will remind you on a weekly basis. If you're watching this episode, episode 1's a 2-parter, so... Start with this week's episode.
Remind me what Face Off is.
It's the makeup effect show. So they will get a bunch of new talented, so people who have been working in the industry or not working in the industry who have had their own special shops from basically all over, and they will bring them and they will compete against each other to make different themed monsters, just makeup designs, and all those kind of special effects makeup.
Yeah, I've seen it on Space every now and then.
It's on Space. Really, well, it's kind of hard not to. They have almost 2 seasons a year now, it seems. It feels like there's like every 3 months there's a new face-off. But the last one just ended like 3 months ago.
But it's really neat because like they were given such short amount of time to get these like amazing prosthetics and these amazing costumes and stuff like that done. And realistically, they would have a lot more time for these. And some of the stuff they do in this just blows your mind.
Creative. Especially, what was it? Last season, I think, was the Return of the Champions. No, sorry. 2 seasons ago, Return of the Champion season. It was ridiculous.
And that's the thing, too. Like, it shows, like, even the ones that you're really like, it's not as great as the other ones. I'm like, given the time they were given... Still amazing.
Oh, yeah. Like, when they're really well done, you should see some of them. It's, how did you even do this with such a short amount of time? And some of them, you look at them and it's like, and then the judges will pass by and they'll be like, they did this part very well, they did this very, very well. And you'll see that there's actually more to it that you might not realize. Yeah. But I don't want to go too long on Face Off. It just, new season started. I'm looking forward to it. There's definitely some interesting people. The first Spotlight challenges, they have to make as a team, so there's 3 teams. They have to make 2 aliens that crash landed. And then at the end of the episode, there's a twist that they throw in. They didn't crash land on Earth. They crash landed on a planet of the apes type of planet. So they have to pick one of 3 different types of simians, and they have to make a citizen of that planet as well. And so they have to make 3 costumes. There are 5 people, and they have like 2 days left.
Okay, so they crashed on Earth 3.
So it's going to be crazy. I'm looking forward to the next episode. It's going to be it's fun because it's, how would I put it? It's a reality TV show, but it's not very like reality drama. Like it's not like drama. It's really about the art a lot of the time.
Which is what I like about these types of shows that are coming up. Like I like the whole like Food Network,
Chopped, right?
Chopped and like Iron Chef type of thing. Because you're so good. But I love how they're going, like, you get to see the background of all these, like, things where you're like, man, this is amazing, but how is it done? And then, like, the special effects one is just a great example of how, like, you would not understand it, and you see people who do cosplay and make these things, and then you see like what the professional levels are, and you see in these shows, and it's like, whoa, that's amazing. Really, like I really do enjoy those type of shows because you do kind of learn a lot. You do kind of understand a lot more, and I think a lot of these shows are deriving from like the makeover home edition type of stuff, where you get to see kind of like the positive side of how like these things can be built, how they're done, stuff like that. So it's really awesome.
We're not looking at the crappy parts of humanity.
Exactly.
The normal. There is some crappiness there. They're showing you the whole range of humanity in terms of like that. So
with the skill set.
Yeah, but like Andrew said, they can really pop these out really fast.
And like, just imagine if some of them had more time, what they could do.
Exactly, and that's what's freaky.
Yeah, I know. That's another show I've been crazy on. So continuing on that whole like TV train. So this is all a bunch of North American TV that I've been watching. The Mindy Project I've been watching. 13 episodes are finally out. They realize that they might fall into a problem where they might have to break up like so you know, like in a show where it's like, will they get together, will they not get together? It's sort of like, when will they get together? And when they do get together, it actually kind of works still. So I'm looking forward to that. It's a fun show. The jokes are hilarious. And the things she says, great. If you've seen The Office, it's Mindy Kaling from that. She's the brown girl, I guess. I don't know. I've only seen The Mindy Project, and there's some really good scenes. It's a comedy, funny. Definitely check it out. Forever, or American Sherlock, sort of. Basically, it's about a guy who's immortal, who is a medical examiner, and he goes around solving cases. So it's like Castle, but without all the pop culture references. But he's not a writer, but he's a doctor. Essentially, it's the whole will they, won't they from Castle.
You just reminded me to watch Castle. That's it.
Basically.
That whole thing does not sound interesting.
Forever, it's actually kind of, like when they bring up the whole immortal thing, it's kind of interesting. Otherwise, it's basically immortal thing, a bunch of episodes, case of the week. Immortal thing, bunch of episodes, case of the week. Immortal thing. Those immortal thing episodes are pretty cool.
They can be immortals.
Good quote, thanks.
And the last thing we're going to bring up is Glee, season 6 or whatever.
They're still going?
It's the last season.
What I was about to say.
It's the last season. They're going back to their roots. A lot of season 6 feels like they're going back to what made the show work in the earlier seasons, and not what the show became in like the last few seasons.
Did they ever make it to regionals?
They won nationals in like season 3. Basically, season 3 is where it kind of feels like the show is culminated. But they did seasons 4 and 5. In season 5, they tried to bring a whole new cast of characters in to try to bring it back to that old roots. They basically gave up on that halfway through the season, and they basically got rid of them for the 6th season. I like the show. The music is decent. It feels like it's back to being what kind of meta it was. So it's no longer like, how would I put it? In the first season, it was very much could tell who was writing each episode. It was written by several different writers. Each writer had their own storyline going on, and you could tell which episode was who, because one episode was really drama heavy, one episode was ridiculously comedy, one episode was actually decently balanced, and it would go through that. And then when it got picked up for a second season and whatnot, you could tell that they went pretty much what it worked with. Oh, people really like the ridiculousness of it, and that's where they went with it, and that's what season 2 and 3 kind of work. And season 4 is like, they get rid of, like, it's like, okay, we get it, you guys have grown up, we don't care. Show us some new people. Apparently the new people weren't interesting. They also gave them really shitty plot line.
Bring back the old people.
But so they brought back the old people. They actually brought in a new cast of characters that, how would I put it, that do actually seem interesting as people. And I'm actually I want to see more of them as characters instead of the old cast just being there.
I'd be interested because I did like the mashups, the musics, except for the fact that apparently Journey is always like a theme. But
they make fun of it in the first episode. It's like I am now the leader of this rival group. And they're such well-oiled machines, so no more rap, no more Journey, no more of this. So he's basically they're being meta again, but in a very not subtle, but not as oh my god, we do these crazy things.
I just remember one of the episodes, and they're just like, "All right, I've got a great idea, guys, Journey," and it's like we've already done this.
Yeah. Honestly, I'll put it this way. They did a mashup episode last week where they mashed up 2 different albums and songs from 2 different breakup albums. It was like Atlantis Morissette and I think Tapestry or Donna Summers. I can't remember who the actress is. The singer is. And the songs mix very well. And they're from one's from the 80s or 70s and one is from the 90s.
Yeah, those are the ones I like.
The way they mash them up is just beautiful and I loved it. I'm like, you feel the mashup. You can feel, you can hear one part of the song when they're singing, and you can hear the other song.
So great. Got it. Watch Face Off, catch up on Glee. Got it.
You don't have to catch up on Glee. You can honestly start Glee at season 6. Let's put it this way. Main character did the worst show on television ever, and basically it ruined her stardom career. And so she's washed up, and now she has to go teach Glee back at her old school.
Okay.
So start at season 6 and enjoy it. They get rid of most of the cast, and they brought back a lot of the old cast. If you've seen season 1 through 3, just jump right to 6.
Kind of sounds like Community.
No,
he graduates, he fails at being a lawyer again, he goes back to teach.
Basically.
I don't know anything about Community.
Kevin doesn't watch Community because he's lame. So yeah, those are the shows. So it's Glee, take it or leave it. I know a lot of stigma out there for that. The Librarians, definite watch. If you liked Warehouse 13, if you like, how would I put
Buffy the Vampire Slayer? No,
it's not as dramatic as that. It's like Buffy when they were doing their musical episode kind of silly.
Those are so good.
And think of it like that. The entire show is like that. Yeah, I'm trying to think of other funny, Eureka. If you liked Eureka, go back and, The Librarians has that very much, funny, but can still do drama feel. There are stakes and things like that. Really worth it. Forever, take it or leave it. There's enough procedural shows out there. I just like a fun mystery show every now and then. And it stars Mr. Fantastic. The guy who played Mr. Fantastic in the movies.
Oh, there we go.
Fantastic Four movies.
Thank you.
Plays the main character in the TV show. And the Mindy Project, if you're looking for a good, rom-com comedy kind of TV show, definitely check this one out. It basically plays up on all the tropes. Anything else you guys want to bring up?
One more thing. It did come up, and this might be more in Wendel territory interested. Initial D, they're remaking the first season really quickly in hour episodes, and I saw that as well, and it was really interesting. So if you did like the Initial D thing, they're redoing that. In hour-long episodes, and they're doing a good job with that, and the style a lot better than what it was the campy original one that they had before. Anyway, that's about it.
Looking forward to the Venture Brothers special airing later tonight, and also check out Star versus the Forces of Evil. It's one of those Adventure Time type shows. It's kind of funny, worth checking out.
Cool. So that's just a few of the things we've been geeking on this week. Join us in our main topic, where we'll be discussing Avatar: The Last Airbender and more primarily the Legend of Korra.
This is Austin St. John. I play Jason, the original Red Ranger from television's Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Right now, I am geeking out at the Tower Podcast. Check it out, man. It's Morphin time.
And we're back, and in this, our main topic, we'll be discussing The Legend of Korra. But before that, we're going to talk a bit about its predecessor series, Avatar: The Last Airbender. So, what happens in...
Or in other words, the superior show.
Whoa. We'll get into that.
Debatable. So basically, Avatar: The Last Airbender takes place in a, I guess, not Earth, but a Earth-like planet, obviously, with its own thing. And in this one, people have different, affinities to the, not everybody, but certain people develop the ability to bend the elements. And so they're called benders. So you can bend earth, fire, water, and air.
No heart.
No heart.
So there's no Captain Planet on this world.
Well, technically, there is the heart bending.
Shut up, no.
If you want to look at it that way, but that's more of a subsect of bending that we don't talk about.
And then you have like the different nations as well.
So, and most of these, the different bending nations are basically
Based
tied
on
together.
different
Yeah, so the Fire Nation, the Earth Nation.
So, like, a lot of the water, like, so there's the water tribes, there's the Earth Kingdom, the Fire Nation, and the air nomads. Okay?
Normans.
And so each of the different nations have their own, like, they're all based on, I guess, more, Eastern religion and philosophy in terms of, like, the way they kind of, like, dress and act, but it all still revolves around bending. So
Well,
it's
you
not
had
actually
a-
religious based, but it feels like very Eastern culture-y.
You had the Earth Nation was essentially China.
Yeah.
The Fire Nation, I think I would put them more with Japan.
Yeah.
The Water Tribe was Inuits.
Yeah, a lot of the...
And the air nomads were like lamas and monks and the kind of people up there.
And even the fighting styles that they had used were really based on the martial arts that would fit more or closely to the element that they were rolling with, and kind of like also the religion. So they did a lot of research and a lot of setup for this, and it was really good.
So the main caveat of the show is that you can only bend one type of element. So you can either bend earth, water, fire, air. No one can bend more than one, except for one person who is called the Avatar, who is able to bend all four elements, and is reincarnated in a cycle, I think, which goes earth, fire, air, water.
Yeah, and he's also the bridge between the physical world and the spirit world, and has the power to restore balance in the world.
Exactly. This story takes place, I think, it's been 100 years since the Avatar has last been seen, and the Fire Nation, essentially what they did is they knew that the reincarnation cycle would be air, and so they basically eradicated as many of the air tribes, nomad tribes, as possible.
Because the last Avatar at the time was a firebend, originally a Fire Nation person, and he died trying to save the Fire Lord at that time.
Therefore, he was reborn as an airbender, and when Fire Lord Sozin tried to take over the world using the extra power of a comet, he figured, well, the Avatar is probably a very young airbender right now, so I'm just going to kill them all to be safe. He doesn't get in the way of my plan.
Side note, spoilers if you haven't seen The Last Airbender.
Yeah. Well, this is still the very early parts of the show, and well, I guess this comes out in backstory later.
Yeah.
This is mostly the backstory. So it's been 100 years since the Avatar has been last seen. Katara and Sokka.
Sokka.
Sorry.
It's Sokka in the movie.
Oh, jeez.
We don't talk about.
Shut up.
No, we don't talk about. So Katara and Sokka fight Sokka.
It's your own fault.
Sokka.
Sorry, so Katara and Sokka find this giant ice ball while they're out hunting, I guess, and while Katara's practicing waterbending because she's like the only waterbender left in the Southern Water Tribe because the rest went off to war.
Yeah, because now the Fire Nation thinks, well, we got all the airbenders, so that means he probably been reborn in the Water Tribe at this point.
Or I think a lot of it is like, well, they can't really, like, they went to fight the war, and the Fire Nation's like, well, there's no Avatar really to stop us. He hasn't been around for 100 years. We can finally take over the world, and no one can really stop us because of our technological prowess.
Yeah.
They crack it, and out falls a boy and his flying bison. Well, you find out later it's a flying bison.
Appa is so awesome. I need a plushie of that.
They realize that this is the Avatar because of the tattoos. He's like the last airbender.
Also, it could also be that he did an air move, and they're like, oh my god.
Yeah, well, he's also the last airbender. They haven't been seen also in X amount of years because of this. They realize that he hasn't learned all four elements that he needs to, so he only knows airbending. He's a master of airbending, but he doesn't know the rest. So he has to go find a water teacher, which is where the first book goes to, book 1, Water. And so him, Sokka, and Katara travel across, I guess, the world. Well, it's mostly Earth Kingdom. They travel mostly across the Earth Kingdom, but not like the main parts, like the remote areas that no one really
Let's put it this way. They go from the South Pole all the way to the North Pole.
And the Earth Kingdom is basically the largest landmass.
Yeah.
So they have to pass through it. So they pass through it. They have some fun random adventures. They get to the Northern Tribe, Water Tribe, and the Fire Lord has launched a giant assault on it because it's one of the few nations that are resisting him. He also finds a water master up there. He learns a bit while he's traveling with Katara, and she becomes also a more effective waterbender as she travels and as she learns from a waterbending master. up there.
Technically, by that time, Katara becomes a waterbending master pretty quickly. She picks it up really fast.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's during the series, she picks up on all the skills a lot faster, and then she ends up being like the strongest healer and fighter, and not just, which apparently in the culture it's split up.
Well, in the northern culture, anyway.
Yeah.
So after the craziness at the Northern Wanderer tribe, in season 2 they go on to find an Earth teacher because that's the next element he has to master. You meet one of my favorite characters from the Avatar: The Last Airbender, Toph, and she's a blind Earthbender who is raised in a provincial family, like high-class family house, but she's underground earthbending fighter.
She learned her skills from the badger moles.
Yes, the original Earthbenders.
She's tough and crass while her family's all prim and proper.
So she pretends to be frail, but really inside she's a big hulking man, it seems like. So he meets her, she teaches him how to earthbend. Some craziness happens, Aang gets pretty messed up, and that leads into season 3, Fire, where he gets to, what is it? So there's this prince chasing him named Zuko. He was exiled by the Fire Lord for basically insulting him. Well, he insulted a general, which in turn was an insult on him.
Well, he got exiled because he refused to fight his father in Agni Kai.
And his father basically fought him, scarred him, and so he has a giant scar.
In short, his father's a dick.
Basically, you find that out as you go along. He essentially... what is it? As he goes along over the past few seasons, he realizes that he's not totally aligned with what his family is sort of doing.
He no longer cares about the restoring his honor, but actually taking down his father, realizing that
his father's bad for the world.
And his sister's batshit crazy.
So he teaches Aang how to firebend.
While teaching himself. There's a good episode where they're... Actually, I think...
Is that where they go to the dragons?
Yeah, they go to the dragons, and they both... Because Zuko would usually use his rage, he's realizing that he doesn't have as much of the strength as he did before, because he's not as angry, because he's accepted a lot of stuff, so they end up finding like the Sunbenders or the Sun
Warriors,
and which end up still protecting the 2 last dragons or something like that, and they learn Aang and Zuko both learn from the dragons how to do the firebending the natural way.
Fire is life.
And it ends up like doing colorful fires and stuff like that. But I definitely love that season just because like everybody has like a trip with Zuko because apparently it's the thing, and then Toph tries to have one. It's like, man, you're boring.
Okay, so a few things I didn't mention as you're going along. So you find out also in season 1 that there's a time limit on how he has to learn all the elements. He has until the return of the comet where all the firebenders will be that much more powerful and they will be at the height of their power to try and take over again. So he has to learn them all within the equivalent of a summer for like 4 or 5 months from when he finds out. So this is all happening still on a very quick pace.
And then they also find out that right before the comet, there's an eclipse which stops the power of the firebenders, and they try to,
utilize that to their advantage.
Book 2 is basically the assault of that, and then...
But the crazy sister got a hold of the plans, and that went all to poof.
Essentially. So a lot of what makes season 3 also interesting is that Aang as a character is dealing with the fear of because it was a pretty heavy defeat he suffered in season 2, and it's overcoming that, learning to firebend and learning also to be the Avatar.
And he also had momentarily lost the connection to the spirit, and so he wasn't able to use the Avatar state.
Yeah.
And there's also the final confrontation with the Fire Lord where he had to find another way to beat him aside from killing him because it's against his ways as a monk.
Wasn't there an episode of Footloose in there too?
There's a lot of good things in there. So basically, in short, Aang and crew have to go stop the Fire Nation from taking over the world. They do so, obviously, because there's another show after this. But it's still a fun ride, and I still think you should definitely check it out. If you guys want to go into, I guess, a few of the fun episodes from the show, you can start by bringing them up.
Sokka being the comedic kind of hold in the whole show, doing a great job throughout the series, kind of keeping things funny and wacky. And then having in the 3rd season where he ends up like seeing that everybody has their own little niche and their own little like, and then he ends up finding a master in the Fire Nation to teach him how to not only sword fight but also build a sword out of meteor, because a meteorite had like just fallen. He's like, I want a meteor sword. So cool. You see so much growth from a character that's supposed to be just sort of the joke character, and I think that worked. Like, just to use that as the example, they do such a great job throughout the season of the growth of all the characters, but even the joke one, and it works so
I
well.
think that I think how I would put it is like, even as a comedic element, he wasn't really ever, he may have started off maybe in the first early episodes as a joke character, but it always felt that he has proven it, he could always sort of fight as well. Even back in like season 1, they always kind of
trusty boomerang.
They always put it together like he was always, as much as he was comedic, he was also a capable enough fighter.
And he was apparently a very good strategist.
Strategist.
Yeah, he was definitely the brains of the group.
Yeah.
Which is funny considering like the type of character he was being portrayed as.
One thing I loved about that episode, Sokka's Master, is whenever they focused on the rest of the group when Sokka wasn't there, they were just completely lost without him. They were like, what do we do now?
Yeah.
No, tell a joke.
Because in some ways, Aang, even though he was the Avatar, was still like 10. Sokka was the oldest. He was, in reality, the leader of the group. Even though that he didn't have any bending, he thought he was more rational. He thought the least of with his emotions, even though he did do silly things every now and then. So that was kind of cool. Iroh as a character, he's the wise old man throughout the entire show. So
Iroh is definitely one of the strongest characters throughout the series of The Last Airbender, and like the expanding of like how intricate he is between like how he's connected to everything, like kind of like realizing the loss of his son and how he gets very connected to Zuko and being attached as if Zuko is his own son as well.
And looks can be deceiving because in season 3, a lot of characters get like these crazy awesome moments in season 3. You can tell, the show knew it was in its final season. It had a decent amount budget. Iroh basically, he let himself go, but not really, because he at some point he gets captured and he's in his jail cell basically doing push-ups on 2 fingers and preparing his escape, and oh man.
He buffed up.
What was the nickname that was given in the show? Like the
Dragon of the West.
Oh yeah, the Dragon of the West, because apparently he was able to destroy everything except Ba Sing Se or something like that.
The last
Well, I think it had something to do with the whole, you get the name dragon when you slay a dragon, but that was actually just a ploy he used. But I think it was that whole fire breathing thing he did at you remember with the tea?
Oh, I can't remember, but yeah, no, I do remember it being discussed in the show. But yeah,
but another thing about his son thing, and you mentioned that was from an episode of Tales of Ba Sing Se. That was such a great episode. Where it was all these little short stories about what everyone's doing in the city.
So essentially, they go to Ba Sing Se, which is the capital of the Earth Kingdom, and while they're basically waiting to meet the king, a lot of little side stories. So you get to see Zuko and Iroh, who are basically living a simple, nice life.
Running a tea shop.
What is it? I can't remember a few of the stories, but I think, is this the one where Appa gets kidnapped?
No, he's already been kidnapped at this point. The stories where Aang helps a guy who runs a zoo. Katara and Toph go to a salon. They do some girl time bonding. Sokka goes to a poetry slam. And Iroh has the remembering of his son and a day in Ba Sing Se. And Zuko goes out on a date and blows it.
Yeah.
Apparently that girl he went on a date with is actually Bolin and the other guy's grandmother.
Mako's?
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Oh, I gotta recheck that. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, I need to find the source again, but that's what I remember reading. It's oh man.
Must look into that. That actually sounds very meta.
So there's a lot of fun episodes, and I think a great, episode also you'll find there's a lot of the great episodes in season 3, but the Ember Island players.
The recap episode.
That is the best recap episode of any show of all time.
It recaps the entire series, but not in a typical clip show fashion. So the characters are basically hiding out. They are wanted technically fugitives, but no one knows what they look like. They're taking a break from all their training because, Aang is having trouble connecting with the Avatar state, and they need a break. So they go see a play, and it's the Fire Nation's take on the Avatar's journey from the season 1 onward. So it's obviously putting the Fire Nation in a good light. It's propaganda to some extent, but it's also a really decently good recap of what has happened in the last 3 seasons.
They make Aang portrayed as a girl. They make Toph as a big boulder character.
So, like that comment where I said Toph is basically this frail little girl that she pretends to be, but is really just this big hulking man. And I think there's a scene that sums it up where everyone, like, Toph is the only one who enjoys it because she's the only one who thinks it's awesome that she's portrayed completely differently than how she is in some regard, how she looks.
For her, it was like, yeah, that's really what
That's why I'm on the other side. So,
like, Katara was like, they made me out to be some kind of overly emotional woman who can't help but give a good friendship speech. And they were like, yeah, it's nothing like you at all. And I love what Sokka did. He actually went backstage and he gave the actor playing him a better set of jokes.
And at the end, they walk out and are like, well, that was horrible.
That was depressing.
I think one of the best things that came out of that episode is they took that whole, like, scene of where they're talking about going to go see the play.
And set it to right after, like, Avatar, the last Airbender movie.
Yeah, exactly. So when Sokka opens the poster, instead of being a poster of the play, it's a poster of the M. Night Shyamalan movie, and then just cuts exactly to that scene. It's like, that was horrible. That was not good at all. Yeah. The effects are decent. It sums up the movie perfectly.
It's funny because I think, this was a part of, like, this Avatar marathon, I think, when it first came out. They basically were showing, like, an episode a day, and this is, like, this is the episode before your season, or at this point, it was a series finale. Yeah. That's a series finale. This is, like, your penultimate episode. It's a recap. It recaps everything over the last 3 years. It does it well. You got a sense of the journey. It's funny, and it doesn't do it like normal. It reminds me a lot of like that Community clip show where they do a clip show, but it's of clips that you've never seen.
And if I'm not mistaken, that episode was also when I think Zuko, his sister, the Mylin, and Ty Lee, where they're just like, oh, let's go to our old summer.
Oh yeah, no, they were hanging out on the beach and all that.
It was a breather episode before the big 3-part finale. Yeah. A 4-part finale, my bad. Any last comments you guys would like to make on Avatar The Last Airbender before I move on to
Korra? Really solid 3 seasons. I like how it's anime styled but Nickelodeon jokes. So like instead of like the anime sweat drops, you've got like them going like their jaw drops and all that stuff. It works so well. They did such a great research with it. It is such a solid cartoon. It's such a solid show. If you have not watched it, absolutely do I suggest you watch it.
Avatar by far is one of the best Western animated shows to come out in a long time. Highly recommended. Really funny. Good for all ages, really. I can't think of a reason somebody should not watch it. The action is great. The humor is great. The drama is real. And the thing is, these characters are kids, but they feel right for their age. Like Aang, yeah, he's like, what, 12 or something? I forget his age.
He's really young. He's 10 or 12. He's
exactly. He's 12, but you feel his age and you feel the pressure of the world on him.
You feel his age, but not in like a grating Hollywood like, I'm 12, I'm super annoying. It's more like he has this weight of the world on his shoulder, but at the same time, he's still a 12-year-old, so he is going to do stupid, silly things and every now and then. But he understands the weight of his responsibilities.
Great show. Highly recommended. What are you waiting for if you haven't seen it?
Quick note, and that's sort of it's sort of how the naming of the next series came to play. Not originally, but the title was not just The Last Airbender. In other regions, it was called The Legend of Aang. And so that's why the next series is called The Legend of Korra. It basically plays on to what the naming was for the other regions.
It's a fun series. It's, how would I put it? It feels a bit at the beginning like it's slow moving, and that first season is in some regards, the weakest season, but I still think they were figuring out what worked about the show and things like that. You can understand why it's weak, but season 2, season 3 is much stronger. The writing's a lot tighter. It feels like they're making a much bigger progress in their mission at the same time as well. You get a lot of good character development, which is not unheard of, but still kind of surprising for a show that deals with such young characters in general. Like, it's a good show. It's definitely worth a watch.
And a huge cast, even like every episode with like new characters and a bit of a story with them too. So like a lot of characters.
And everything pretty much gets nicely wrapped up towards the end of the season. They even bring back characters who were only in 1 or 2 episodes from the finale.
Well, that's what you can do when you have a 4-part finale. Yeah. But it's great that they did do something like that. Everyone, and so many memes too.
Although that Zuko's mom cliffhanger, Jesus Christ.
Well, it gets resolved in the comics. Yeah. Alright, so let's get into Legend of Korra. It's just a few small thoughts before we get super spoilery about Korra. We're going to go into this season by season, but I thought we should, throw out a few little things about the show that we kind of think if people should watch it or whatnot. Korra is not exactly like The Last Airbender in certain regards. It is an older character, but it does feel like they have matured the story a bit. The action is amazing. The animation is great. Well done. The stories are really good themes. It's a definite watch in my opinion. You should definitely get through the whole show. It's 4 seasons instead of 3. Like what I said with The Last Airbender, it still feels like book 1, they kind of knew what they were doing, but they still were figuring stuff out. But in those last 2 seasons, they've really got what they want to do down pat, and they basically write a much tighter and a much stronger story. So it's a definite watch.
You shouldn't go into Legend of Korra expecting Last Airbender. It's not as good of a show. It's still a fine show, but it's different. Like you said, the storylines have matured, and there's a lot more emphasis on relationships. I think they really love doing love triangles. But the action is good, and for an older audience, it is a good show.
Cool. The characters that they've created for The Legend of Korra work. You can see that they're trying to do some similarities to the old Avatar group with the new Avatar group, but they expand on how the bending works. They expand on how the characters have evolved and how the world itself has evolved. So yes, much more mature, much more technologically advanced, especially with the new bending that was introduced near the end of The Last Airbender. And then you have a lot of the characters that are really expanding on like the maturity of around that age. So I think their age range is around like 17, 18, I think. Or it's around those age range. Yeah. So you do get that grasp of like that's what they have to deal with. And you do get an immediate kind of introduction as to what the new Avatar can do, and kind of like a quicker kind of already knowing all the elements, except for one, which ends up being one of the main focal point of the first season. Very good. Very solid. Okay,
so we're going to get into a season book by book, quote unquote, breakdown of the show. So we're going to talk first about season 1, aka book 1, Air. So you find out in a pretty funny intro sequence that they know that the next Avatar is going to be a water tribe. And so you say you know who the Avatar is? How could you tell? And it's basically like 6-year-old Korra coming in and was like, I'm the Avatar! And shooting up like, deal with it! Fire, water, and like...
She's got a punch.
And earth and everything everywhere. Just like...
She's a little fat child. And just like, deal with it! And you can see the whole hut is just like in disarray. And they're like, yeah, no, we know. We were expecting you.
And so you can tell that this is them. Like, you can see how she's set apart differently from Aang, and how it's going to be a different kind of Avatar, and it's going to be interesting. X amount of years later, she's older. She has to learn air. She's mastered pretty much water, fire, and earth. And so the last one she needs to learn is airbending. So she goes to learn from Aang's son, Tenzin, who will become her master to teach her airbending.
Who's currently the only air master, and the only others that know airbending are
his kids.
Yes, I think all 4 of them.
3.
Yeah, well, Aang had 3 kids.
Yeah,
one bouei-bu.
Oh, but that's later. Yeah. You don't find that out too much later. You know that he has a sibling. You know that Tenzin has siblings, but that's still like book 2 onwards. towards.
No, they mentioned
end of season 1, but
no, they mentioned it first episode. Tenzin's wife asks Katara about his siblings. Is like, well, Kaya and Bumi were much more wild child, but Tenzin was always serious.
So she starts off having trouble learning airbending throughout most of the season, and at the same time, how would I put this? She basically joins a pro bending team. So there's a sport now in the city that she moves to called Republic City, which was founded by Aang and company.
Aang and Zuko.
Yeah, well, Aang and the Fire Nation. Yeah. Using Earth
Kingdom territory.
Kingdom territory that he got from Bumi.
I think I think it relates a bit through the comic books as well.
Exactly. Essentially, what it is the conquered Fire Nation colonies, and rather than just evacuate all the Fire Nation citizens who had been living there for generations at this point, they just made a whole new nation on those territories, United Nations.
Perfect. So she joins Pro Bending League, which is essentially, how would you describe it?
It's a sport that they derived using fire, water, and earth. It's sectioned off into core.
It's like sort of like a tug of war kind of game where you're, instead of trying to pull the people across,
you're trying to push them back.
trying to knock them off a platform.
And when they're off the platform, they fall into water, so they're safe.
Yeah, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. But I don't think there's a decent real world analog.
No, that's what I'm trying to say. It's like you try to knock people off. It's 3 against 3, one of each bending type.
I think it's essentially dodgeball, except you've got like your you've got your elements that you're trying to push people
more
off.
or less. So she joins a group with a pair of brothers, Bolin and Mako, who she becomes friends with, and later starts dating one. And along this, she meets also what's her name, Asami, who is the heir to Future Industries, who makes a lot of the technology that Republic City uses.
The automobiles, the radios, the constructions.
And then on top of that, she gets involved with in a plot by an equalist organization who is trying to get rid of the Bender autocracy that's sort of going on, where the Benders are kind of basically deciding everything for even non-Benders, and the non-Benders kind of want a say in matters. So he's trying to make things equal, quote unquote, but it's sort of like a terrorist group, and the leader named Amon can remove people's bending, and so that's a whole scary thing that's going along. In general, like quick things you guys want to say about season 1.
I like how they introduce the characters. Like I like how there's the brother pair, one who's firebender, one is earthbender, so you can see how that's how the relationship of the past has built up these two pairs that would have not been possible in the past, or at least per the storyline. So it's neat that you've got the brothers sibling kind of thing with the bending,
and Mako, yeah.
And then they end up being part of the team Avatar,
as they call themselves.
And then you have Asami later on, who ends up being kind of like
the Sokka of the group, minus the comedic elements, but
and
she's essentially she has no bending, but she's a capable fighter. She uses technology. She uses weapons to her advantage. She does have a bit of a how would I put it, a turn to evil, because you find out that partway through this the season that her father is working with the Equalists because he also believes in Amon's equal society kind of views.
Are we allowed to say spoilers at this point?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Okay. The reason why is because Sokka's mother died from a firebender.
Sokka?
Sorry, Asami.
Asami's mom, yeah.
But
New Sokka.
So he's also creating, a lot of the technology that the Equalists are using.
But I guess I did like that moment where like, oh, she's gonna turn evil. Nah, she's a good guy.
Yeah, she did put the fear in you for a little bit that she was. I'm like, but she was so good as a team.
It was a good fake out moment.
So she also starts dating Mako in this season.
Like I said, they love doing their love triangles.
Korra, actually, it's more than a love triangle in this season. So Bolin has a thing for Korra. Korra has a thing for Mako. Mako ends up dating Asami, and at the same time
has a thing
for Korra. And it gets a bit hectic like that. You also find out that Tenzin had a thing with the chief of police, who is Toph's daughter, but ended up marrying a non-bender in the end, but has produced 3 bending children.
Oh god, I love that scene where she actually starts talking about his relationship with her, and he's like, starts going off, like, it was a long time ago, and wait, why am I telling you this?
So yeah, they definitely still have a lot of the humor, and I like at one point one of the kids is like, "Leave my father's ex-girlfriend alone," and just like when they're trying to like push off some of the villains.
Oh, what else? Like in the first episode, what do they do? It's like, Grandma Katara, I was wondering, I just want to know what happened with Zuko's mom. Well, it's a very interesting story, and I don't know where the other sister comes in and just starts blurting all this random stuff. Such a
crazy thing. So Amon, you find out as the towards the end of the season that his brother, you find out who is his brother, is also one of the on the council for like the Bending Council that basically handles affairs of Republic City.
And is able to blood bend without a full moon.
So they realize that Amon can basically blood bend, and that's how he's taking away bending. Along the way, there's some great fights in this. A few great fights in this. The way they use some camera angles is pretty cool. I guess one of my main issues with the season is that it feels like there's a lot of setting the groundwork for this universe, but it kind of just ends. The whole plot of the Equalist kind of just ends like in the last few episodes. So they kind of have to resolve it quickly.
Well, I kind of understand why. They were run by a person who says, like, benders are evil, benders are bad. And then, lo and behold, their leader is a bender. It's a whole thing of hypocrisy. They believed in this guy's image. It's like you find out, your leader is like, I hate all these kinds of guys. By the way, I'm one of those kinds of guys.
No, that's not what I mean. I mean, like, it feels like they do put a lot of character development. They put a lot of, this is how Republic City works. You get to see a bit of the inner workings. You get to see a lot of the craziness. They do a whole lot of pro-blood bending. But it feels like how they actually resolve the whole story is like, I am this big bad. Oh, by the way, I was one of the people I hate, and I'm out of the picture. And it was just like, quick.
I'm gonna have to disagree with you fully on this. I really, the more I think about it, I think season 1 was by far my favorite. I think Amon was the best villain out of all of them.
Maybe as for motivation-wise, I do not think season 1 is my favorite.
He was the scariest villain. Like, he was actually threatening, and there was this mystery behind his origin that was tied back to Avatar Aang, and the episodes where we actually get to see what Aang was like when he was an adult were also very interesting.
And tall.
Yeah. Grew a beard, too.
A few things. The part where they find out that Amon, gets outed as a waterbender is when he takes away Korra's powers, but then for some reason it didn't fully work, and although it took away the fire, water, and earthbending, somehow that allowed her to do airbending, and so she's just pummeling him with airbending, pro-bending style, and it's like, man, that's so good. And so they find out what's going on because she was trying to out him before, but then Amon found a way to block that. As for the whole story and how it felt rushed, the reason why is behind the scenes of how it was produced. It wasn't sure if this was going to have additional seasons, so the story kind of got quickly rushed and had to finish up the season with sort of a ending because there was no guaranteed it wasn't sure if there were going to be book 2, 3, or even 4 at all at the time, and only near right at the end did Nickelodeon approve even more stuff, but by that time they already had to send all the other stuff that they needed to go through, so that's kind of how the story ends, and they do sort of at least wrap things up decently if this was only a single season, because you do kind of get Korra connected to the spirits and ending up rekindling her abilities and then able to restore back what Amon had taken away from all the other benders.
Another thing I say about it, that ending though, is really ballsy what they did. They had essentially murder-suicide.
Yes, actually, you're right. That was a very powerful imagery because you have the brothers disappearing away from the scene, and they're just like, we'll just be together forever. It's like we're back together. Nobody can challenge us now, and it's like, yes, brother, and
up the boat.
The politician brother just ignites it with one of the magic shocky gloves into the gas tank, and kaboom! And it's
I did not see that coming.
That was powerful.
Especially on a Nickelodeon show, I was really surprised they got away with that.
And that's why I liked those are one of the core elements that why I liked Avatar. Both generations is that they really pushed the stories and the elements and the actual like emotions that can go behind it and how serious a lot of the things are. So really good.
You know, I don't know how I feel in general about the whole, like, they went from, like, being the feudal era to the Industrial Revolution. And for the most part, I think it works. In some parts, like, they do some creative things, like Sautomobile. And now you have lightning bending, which is power plants.
Yeah, that one was weird. It's like, yay, give me batteries, woo!
It was fun, but I think season 1 did good work in laying the groundwork for what the world had become. We got a decent introduction into the characters. We got Iron Man.
Yeah.
Boy. Oh, yeah.
Iron Man, remember?
Oh, yeah. The same voice actor who does Zuko.
I do agree. Okay, so my like I said, my main issue is that it's not that they don't set up. I feel like they spend a lot of time playing in that world. How would I put it? You're a kid, you're playing with your toys, and it's like your mom's like, you got to be ready in 5 minutes or 10 minutes because we're leaving in 10 minutes, and you're basically, you keep playing whatever you're doing, and then you have a minute to go, and you're like, oh shucks, and you just throw on whatever you have and you just run out the door kind of thing. And that's what it feels like the ending is. I mean, like, obviously they do wrap up, and I do think it's like the murder suicide gutsy move, and I do like how they do flesh out the world. It's just that it feels like if it really was like, you know, they weren't know if they're going to second or third season, that shouldn't really factor into that first season. It really feels like it's like episodes 1 through 10 are, say, like episodes 1, or goes from episodes 1 of 20 to 10 of 20, but episodes 11, 12, and 13 are like, oh, by the way, this is episode 11 of 13, 12 of 13, and 13 of 13. So it feels like it feels at points like they were basically, it's like, we have all this time to tell this huge story, and also it's like, oh, by the way, you don't, so wrap it up.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you do get introduced to a lot of characters, you do get to find out a lot about the world. I feel like it's great as a groundwork for future seasons, in terms of like, now the city, you don't have to describe it as much, but you can still learn a bit about it. But I feel like a lot of it, what happens is very much like just thrown at you at points, instead of just like organically evolving. By the way, I'm his brother, like for shock value, and this is our story. Or a lot of it felt like for shock value towards the end. And also, I have a whole problem with like Haida's taking away her bending, suddenly unlock air power. It's like she didn't really learn the lessons that Tenzin was trying to teach her, but then she kind of does. But now she has air bending, and so now she understands how it works, and now she can do it.
Well, she does sort of figure out some of the footwork and stuff like that in some of the episodes that you do see. You end up, I think what happens is, and again, it's Amon using an ability that's not fully supposed to be doing what it's supposed to, so it could make sense that it's not perfect, and that's why, because, again, she's the Avatar, something got twerked a bit that, oh, now the airbending got kicked in instead of all the other 3 elements.
Or maybe it had something to do with that airbending works on a different level than the other 3 elements, because at this point the only people who've been taking it away from are water, earth, and fire.
Exactly.
It's possible. I just think it was just like, let's just do it this way. I feel like that plot point was supposed to be, it feels like that's a plot point they might have wanted to like extend closer to the end, but it'd be like a few episodes of her trying to be like, what do I do without bending? It feel like they were building that up for like a lot of the season. Is her being afraid of losing her bending to this guy, her being afraid of not being able to take him down, and then the ultimate fear coming true, and it just being like, oh, by the way, now I can just kind of fight. So all those fears I had were kind of just silly in the end. It kind of, I feel like, delegitimizes part of the fear she was going through up until now. And I understand why it happens the way it happens too, don't get me wrong, but that's one of those issues. It's like, I feel like, okay, so how would I put it? It's like a few episodes before the finale kicks in, she basically loses her bending, and she has to be like, I don't know how to bend, but Tenzin will try to motivate her to pick it up again. Or even just one episode of her dealing with it. It feels like it's sort of like bending gone, click, click, air bending. It felt very...
Yeah, I think if they had...
That's mostly it, is what I'm trying to say.
I think if they did have an episode where like she had to deal with the loss of it and just sort of finds out, yeah you're right. I think that would have pushed it, gotten that a little bit better, but given what they did do, I still liked it.
Still a good season. I mean, like, even as its weakest season, it's better than like 80% of the shows that are on TV at the time when it was coming out too.
Absolutely.
Don't get me wrong, I just hold it to a higher standard because I've seen the things they can do.
I'll agree. Season 1 could have been done better, especially if they added like an extra 6 or something episodes. But I'll still hold fast saying like I think Amon was definitely one of the best villains.
And so, just in the interest of time, we're going to move this a little bit quicker. And it's a lot very easy to get through book 2. It is by far, in my opinion, the weakest season of the 4. And it feels like this should have been a season 1 in a way. The way it's written, it's like they don't know what to do with the characters. They don't know what to do with the setting. They completely so they take you away from Republic City. They send you to the Northern Water Tribe. It is now like ruled by
Southern Water Tribe.
Is it the Southern Water Tribe?
Yeah, Southern.
Sorry, they take you to Southern Water Tribe, which has rebuilt itself as a great nation again, and it's ruled by Unalaq, who is brother to Korra's father.
Unalaq is the uncle.
No, Unalaq is the leader of the Northern Tribe, and then the Korra's
Father.
I don't think that he was the leader immediately, but he was already a predominant figure.
Yeah.
And
He was the chief after Sokka.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Unalaq is Korra's father's brother.
yeah, but you said that he controlled the Southern. It was just
Sorry, but it was anyway, it happens. But he comes from the north, and with his kids, who are hilarious, by the way, because they're just, how I put it, very lethargic, but also psychopathically crazy. They're kind of fun.
That scene of what was her name? The sister. What was her name again?
Oh my gosh! What is it?
Where they're running away from her because Bolin left her at the altar, and she has all the mascara running. And he turns to Varric, "Is this ship fast enough to get away from my ex-girlfriend? Dude, why do you think I made this ship?"
Eska.
Yeah.
By the way, best character though that was introduced is in this season. It is Varric.
And he's basically that is honestly one of the few great things about this season is everything essentially doing with Varric, who a lot of the season is sort of trying to pull strings behind the scenes with a lot of what's going on, but he also makes Bolin into a movers, which are basically movies, star. So it's like classic black and white kind of real film with the old-timey music guy kind of talking over it, and Bolin becomes Nuktuk, and
Hero of the South.
and he goes around fighting against evil and doing things in the movers, and he becomes a star.
I love it. These entire Nuktuk movies are made as propaganda to get everyone else to go to war with the South.
Yes.
The North.
No,
the South.
The South would take
the South going. Yeah, okay.
And so there is good moments in this season too, but it feels like a lot of the characters kind of lose what made them characters. Like Korra is at her most annoying in this season.
It's like she lost all her experience from the first the first season.
Yeah.
And then she's back to her angsty self and unable to be a human. It's really weird.
It's not that she was unsure of herself, but she was taking it out on everybody but herself, and not in the I can't get airbending. It was just she was being so she's dating Mako now. So Asami and Mako break up. They get together. It's the relationship isn't going well, and he's trying to make things work, but everything he's doing is wrong, even though she's not technically trying to help the situation, and she's just being really not a good person, and she basically falls for the trap that the clearly evil guy is setting up, and there is no hidden about it. You can tell from the moment he walks in, he's gonna be evil.
But I love the color of that palette that they use. Everyone has this nice solid blue color. His dark purple, and it's yeah, you're the villain.
So
the thing about Korra in this season essentially is every time somebody I think there was the perfect line that encapsulates when she's talking to Mako and says well, whose side are you on? Mine or his? There's no sides here. What are you going on about?
Yeah.
She goes completely crazy the first half of the season. But while we're talking about good things about season 2, I think one of the best things about season 2 was the Avatar Wand 2-parter.
Yeah, so the only good thing, I think, the best, I wouldn't say the only good thing, but the best thing is, so you basically find out how the first Avatar became the first Avatar. So you hear about basically the cities where people were living in were
The backs of giant lion turtles.
And they would, if you left the city to go hunt or in the spirit world, because spirits were basically connected at this time as well.
The lion turtle would impart the element that they had.
Yeah.
which the one that they
He was Earth, I think.
no fire.
Fire, yeah. Sorry, my bad. You cannot have more than one because the body can't handle it. So as Juan is traveling, he essentially enters into a fight between two big spirits, Vaatu and Rava.
Basically, two deities that are tied to each other, constantly battling it out for good and evil.
Without realizing the harm he was going to do, he releases Vaatu from Rava's control to some extent.
Entanglement.
Yeah, and so, because Bravo was trying to keep him in check, so she goes around with him, and she's like, well, if I hold on to the other powers, we can switch between the two. You can switch between all the different elements as he goes along. And you also find out that at this time, he basically stopped living in the city, so he went to live with spirits at some point as well. And you find out how he basically became the bridge by trying to stop the spirits and the humans from going to war. It's a great two-parter. If you only watch anything in season 2, it should be that. And you can honestly, season 2 is a very take it or leave it kind of season.
But here's the thing: after that episode, you pretty much realized the exact plot of what was going to happen in that season.
Yeah,
it was like I'm watching the episode, and we locked Vaatu up in a tree. Unalaq's going to try to release him. Unalaq's going to try to combine with him and become a dark avatar.
A lot of it, a lot of the points seem to just.
Luckily enough, the two-parter still happens in the later half. It's like 8, 9, and then it's sort of right before.
Yeah, I know, but as soon as that two-parter happens, you didn't need to guess. You're going to figure out what's going to happen.
Well, that's as an adult watching it. If you're a kid, you're not going to think about it that much. So they kind of put it in there. And honestly, who cares if you figure out the rest of the season? Look, from the first frame, Unalaq comes into scene. He's going to be a bad guy. The only surprise was Varric. who you know he's doing bad things, but you're like, please don't be such a bad guy.
But he's helping both sides. I love it.
No, I think one of my favorite things is when he's in prison and he's actually saying like, why do you guys hate me so much? Think of all the good things I did for you.
I saved your company. I helped you be a mover star. I got you in jail. Wait, that was bad.
And his assistant, who basically does everything for him.
Julie is so good. Yeah, Julie, do the thing! And she does whatever.
She knows exactly what to do. So that's season 2. Spirits. At the end of it, there's basically this huge...
giant fight.
What is it? A cosmic event called Harmonic Convergence.
Yeah.
And during this,
Rava's destroyed.
And then with the help of the spirit, she comes back, and Korra basically opens up. She basically combines the spirit and the human world together again with using the portal in the main.
But now,
she lost her connection to all the previous avatars due to the battle of this because she lost it. But because of her harmonic convergence, she was able to reconnect herself with Brava.
Yeah.
And she ends up retaining the avatar ability, but without connection to the past lives anymore.
Which severely weakens the avatar state.
Furthermore, it ends up that she makes the decision of not sealing up the spirit world, and so it ends up leading to the 3rd season where all the spirits...
something I want to mention. In this season, you meet, you meet Tenzin's siblings. So his sister, who is a waterbender, and his brother, who is a general in the fire army, but actually has no bending.
He's actually a general in the United Nations Army.
Who had retired and then starts staying with the at the air temple.
And so Tenzin is going on this spiritual journey because he's always had a hard time connecting with the spirits. It was one thing that he could never get from his father. But you find out that his daughter, Janora, can, and has already been. And he gets a bit jealous, and it kind of works out. And she uses her abilities also to go into spirit world to help out Korra. And you get a cameo from Iroh in this season.
There is one cool thing that comes out of season 2, if they ever plan on using it in future series. The Dark Avatar. He now officially exists. I don't know what happened. Rava purified him or not, but the fact of the matter is a Dark Avatar was created, and that means he might be able to reincarnate.
It's possible, but...
So that would be...
I don't think they're going to be making any more Avatar after this.
You never know.
So
how long was it between the Last Airbender?
Yeah, but from what I hear with the issues that they had with season 4, Korra, chances are they don't want to go back to working with Nickelodeon. But
Comic books!
anyway, any other quick thoughts on season 2 or book 2 Spirits?
Varric.
Varric is awesome and becomes more so as you will see in later seasons.
Season 2, introduction of Varric.
Oh, what else? More love triangle in this season, and we even had an amnesia subplot because of it.
No, yeah, they tried to...
We went full soap opera on the romance stuff here.
Oh, and the scene with Bolin, while they're showing the mover thing, Bolin's actually saving the president. President or
Yeah.
President of the United. Oh yeah, because at the end of season 1, they instead of having a council, they decide to have elections, and they elect the first president of the United.
and it's so good. So he's defending
Republic.
the president of the republic, and then you've got the announcer guy from the first season who is describing all the pro bending matches, and he's like, "That's an illegal move, but this is not a real bending, so anything goes." It's so good. They really start pushing how strong Bolin is and how much of growth he has on his own, even after the whole like mover section and the Varric plot stuff.
Bullet, the hero we truly deserve.
Yeah. All right, so that brings us to book 3, the 3rd season, Change. So it's not that long has passed since Korra has basically united the two, the spirit and the human world, and everyone is basically mad at her for it because the spirit vines are taking over parts of Republic City, and they want her to get rid of it, but every time she tries to get rid of it, they just come back in more force. Which basically she kind of sort of exiles her, or not really exiles. At the same time, due to harmonic convergence, all airbenders all across the Earth Nation and around are sprouting out.
nations.
So they're finding out that earthbenders are coming out. So you find out that Boomy is also an airbender. And so they go on a journey to find other airbenders. And so since Korra is not really wanted in Republic City anymore, she kind of goes with Tenzin to
try to find all these
other
airbenders.
At the same time, basically there were 4
Terrorists.
basically terrorist benders. One who wasn't a bender, and he gets airbending as well. And he was a person who was very interested in airbending and the religion behind it and the tenets of airbending. And so he gets airbending, he escapes, he breaks out his crew of 4, and they once tried to kill Korra when she was a kid as the Avatar.
They'd actually tried to capture her.
Capture her to bend her to her own will, to their will, I guess.
Yeah.
And now they're trying to go and get rid of her to sort of bring the balance into human hands.
And they explain that that's sort of the reason why she was kind of being protected by the White Lotus group. And previously, and kind of the reason because of these 4 that they wanted to make sure that the Avatar was growth was done in the manner that it needed to be, as opposed to it being interrupted by this group who had now escaped.
Not to mention the fact they did not know how large the group was, if there were other members of the Red Lotus, because we did learn that Unalaq was actually one of the heads of the Red Lotus.
By the way, the Red Lotus is the group, the name of the group.
Yeah. So in the group you have basically a waterbender who has no arms, so she uses water as sort of her
extension of her arms. Yeah.
We have an earthbender who can lava bend,
basically able to move the rocks,
which is a rare skill, a much more rare skill than metal bending.
Yeah.
And you have a combustion bender who can basically bend like explosions with her mind.
We didn't mention this, but in the Last Airbender, there was a guy called Combustion Man who could just explode things with the mind. She ends up being the same tribe that was able to do this.
Yes. And so they go around trying to basically take out the Avatar.
Well, they first try to capture her.
Yeah, so they do a lot of crazy things, and so you'll see that season 3 and season 4 were done very shortly, one after the other, and it feels like they were written around about the same time. So the group that's going around, they're basically trying to change the world, hence Change.
Well, they're essentially anarchists. What they want is they want people to be in charge of themselves. They don't want leaders. So they actually start targeting world leaders.
I guess, yeah. Well, they start with, the Earth Queen, so they get rid of her, which has ramifications leading into season 4.
But we got to talk about that for a second. That on-screen way they kill her?
Oh, that's not even the worst one that season.
Oh, no, it's not the worst one that season, but it starts it off, and I was like, wow, we're really pushing it here.
Well, no, at this point, they were doing whatever they could, and it makes sense that they would do something like that. He basically suffocates her.
Yeah, he airbends the air out of her lungs.
Yeah.
Showing how powerfully, like, how dangerous airbending could be in the wrong hands.
Yeah. Essentially, along this way, you meet Lin's sister, who basically runs one of the provinces of the Earth Kingdom.
That they created out of metal.
Yeah, so she
Zalfu.
Zalfu, yeah. And you find out there's a whole bunch of baggage between Lin and her sister Suyin. And you find that you go back and you get to meet Toph for the first time as the older Toph, who created the police force that uses primarily metal bending in Republic City.
And we get a lot of drama with Lin's family.
Yeah, and this is where Korra tries to learn metal bending at the same time as well.
But Lin tries to as well, unsuccessfully.
Yeah.
And then falls in love with Opal, who learns who realizes
also, due to harmonic convergence, becomes an airbender because she didn't get any metal bending. Yeah. So Earthbending. They're primarily metal benders in the family, but the family's also pretty funny. So the husband, he's like the
architect.
He's the architect of all the designs that she makes, but he has no earthbending skills. Then there's like her two sons who are basically like her prodigies. Then there's the art son, who I think, does he metal bend as well?
Yeah.
But he metal bends only for art, which has a funny line in season 4, by the way. Stop it, you're crushing my individuality. And then Opal, who can't bend. But you find out that she gets airbending, and there's a whole trying to let her out and things like that.
Yeah, there's one more funny thing about that. The artsy son. He has a sculpture he makes, and they end up throwing it around in a fight. No, my sculpture. Wait, it looks better this way.
Actually, it looks better this way. It's so good.
There's actually a lot that happens in the season 2. So, man, what else?
Varric is seen at.
He's not as much in this season.
Yeah, he's the one who deals with he's just doing a lot of the inventions at the Zalfu. So it's just hiding away from Republic City because, well, he's basically wanted there.
And he explains to us how magnets work.
He's so good. I like how he's using magnets in a metal place. Julie, clean this up! Oh.
So they do make several attempts. They do make an attempt while she's in Zalfu to kidnap Korra, which leads to a pretty huge battle that's intense, pretty intense.
Oh, yeah.
You don't know where that might go. You don't actually know if they're going to save her or not. She might actually get kidnapped at this point. It's pretty crazy. They do eventually succeed in kidnapping her and attempt to kill her while she's in the Avatar state to end the cycle. But before that... is that before that? Yeah, before that, basically, I think it's the most brutal death that you basically see on television is when they take out the combustion bender.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So basically, Lin and her sister have made up and they're basically fighting together.
They're trying to defend the air temple who they've just gathered a handful of the air nomads, or the new ones, and they're trying to train them sort of with the help of Boomy, but not really. And so you start getting the 4 of them are using the new air nations as a ransom to Korra, being show up or we're killing them.
Yeah, they're using them as hostages.
And you end up seeing an amazing fight with Tenzin against what's the villain's guy? Zahir, and you see I think this was the I can't say the word properly. It was basically the
essential?
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. It was the fight that showed Tenzin being the master of air against this guy, and toe to toe, he punch to punch, he's getting them all, and then you can see he's winning, and then when all of them get involved, it's nope, but he's not giving up. It is such a solid scene, a solid fight, a solid...
It almost looked like Tenzin died in that scene. But
they made it look really...
They wouldn't kill him off, but yeah.
This whole season was a lot of well, you just saw the queen die. Tenzin could be dead. They did a good job with really pulling the serious punches in there.
And like Andrew was saying, then the next episode you have the death scene of the combustion bender, where essentially they take a piece of armor,
and just as she's about to shoot her mind beam of explosion, they wrap it around it, and all you see is the light between the holes in the metal, and then you cut to Zahir and Korra, and all you see is an explosion, and it's just like, wow, that's like crazier than the implied murder-suicide in season 1. Because all you see is him look at the glove, him look at the gas tank, they go off, and boom, that's all you see. But this one, you see so much closer, like, almost inner workings of how it basically explodes her head off. And your mind creates like such a horrible scene because that's how human minds work.
Yeah, they did a great job because it was left to the imagination, and it's like your imagination is going to do so much more. Like you're going to think up even worse of what's going to happen than whatever they could show. So it's really powerful.
Yeah. So then after that, you essentially have Korra fight Zahir. Korra win, but
whoa! No, she loses at first and gets captured, and then they put poison in her. Mercury, I think.
Yeah, that's the thing, though. I find that to be a weird gimmick if you think about it. Like, now there is something that exists in this world that can kill an avatar by forcing them into the avatar state and slowly poisoning them.
No, it's not that. It's not that it kills her by slowly poisoning them in the avatar state. Is that the poison will activate the avatar state. And the only way to kill the avatar cycle is to kill the avatar while in the avatar state.
Yeah.
And so they were... Basically, she was trying to fight off the avatar state, so they were waiting for her to become the avatar state to basically shoot all their things at her to kill her.
Yeah, but it's still the same problem. If they just let the poison do its work, she can't get it out of her.
No, because I think the
if she dies due to the poison, this cycle would still continue.
Yeah.
The whole point was that she would be the poison would activate her avatar state because the avatar state is trying to save her. So it's more that it gets to the point of being so endangered that, like, a lot of the times when it's been shown in the past that the avatar state starts up to try to save the individual, the avatar.
The defense mechanism.
And so what they're trying to do, and that's why they had her chained up and whatever, is that once she got to that point fully, that they were going to take her out, and then that would stop the cycle, which is what their whole intention was.
I'm just saying, like, towards the end of that fight, it looked like she was still in the avatar state while she was dying of poison.
Yeah, but I think in that, if the poison was weakening her, I think what would have happened is she would have probably released the avatar state when the avatar realized she couldn't continue on, and then she would just move on to the next. It would restart the cycle, basically. I don't think the poison would ever actually kill her in the avatar state itself, thus leading to the ending of the cycle. It's just poison. The avatar state would try to fight it for as long as it could. When it realized it couldn't, it would just give up, exit the avatar state, and then she would die. Cycle would be reborn.
All right.
Mostly that's how it worked. But what they were trying to do is basically stop her from getting to that point. So they were like, you're going to hit the avatar state, boom, boom, dead. Obviously, interruption happens, the avatar state triggers, they still try to attack her, and she basically wrecks them.
Quick note, Zahir learns how to fly because he no longer has any earthly desires. Basically, he was having a relationship with the combustion girl, and the fact that her head got blown off by metal while she was using her ability released him of anything else that he had strong attachments to, and so because of that, he was able to figure out, hey, look, I'm Superman, and able to fly, which was neat. Although
it kind of makes sense to some extent. He's released his body of earthly tethers, and it makes sense that because a lot of these bendings are like martial arts / kind of like the airbats specifically are way more of a religious leaning.
Yeah.
So, and he was basically reading the readings of, like, I think one of the first airbenders or the first airbending master.
Patik was another one.
Anyway, but so, and he basically it was said that airbending master at his peak could fly, and most of this, actually all of the elements do have secondary skills that they could use. So the absence of worldly tethers, to some extent, the clearing of your mind intensely, means flying.
And that is a very Buddhist teaching, isn't it? Like, you have to clear your mind of earthly desires and such.
Yeah.
But I will say this, Book 3 definitely has the most somber ending of all 4 seasons.
Yeah, it's hopeful at the same time being somber. So Tenzin's oldest daughter, Jinora, who basically in her own right, as they're finding a bunch of like like airbenders to teach, which is also a funny montage of sequences meeting all the different kinds of airbenders. But as they find, as she's going along, she realizes that she does know enough in her mind to become an airbending master, and it's about, she's trying to convince her dad to let her. Her dad is obviously, she's reluctant because it's like my daughter's growing up too fast in his mind. And at the end, she basically does become an airbending master, so she gets her tattoos and everything like that.
Becomes like a female version of Aang. Like the visuals are very close.
Well, it's because she shaved her head, but she gets it back in season 4. But also at this point, the poison had done so much damage to Korra's body while she was in the Avatar state, while she was fighting Zahir, that she can't walk and she can't bend anymore.
They ended up, I keep forgetting her name. Who's the one who removed the...
Suyin?
Sue.
Yeah.
Ends up pulling the metal out. The metal out, and so, but Korra has still struggled, like just dealt with pretty much a near-death experience in this case, so it ends up that she's needing time to recover, and Tenzin ends up kind of making the air nomads into sort of a world police type of...
not police, more like roving, like EMTs. Think of them more of like EMTs. They go in to help people
as much as they can,
and then leave. They don't really, and stay if they, as long as they can, but they just keep going around.
They try to follow the path of the Avatar and try to help maintain balance across the world.
While the Avatar is trying to recover.
But see, that's the thing, like at the end of that episode when Korra shed the tear, I don't know if it's a tear of pride for Jinora or a tear of sadness, because
it's probably both.
Because what we're doing throughout all season 3 is they're trying to put this idea in your head that the Avatar is no longer needed.
Yeah.
And then even Tenzin's speech saying, well, while the Avatar is out, we'll be taking care of things. It's like the show slowly trying to tell Korra, yeah, we don't need you anymore.
Book 3 is a lot. It does feel that way, which obviously they're gonna bring to a head in season 4. But a lot of, like, I think when she's crying at the end, I think that is a tear of sadness as much as it is a tear of pride. She is happy for Jinora because this is someone she has
a lot of feelings
for. It's like family. She's like family, and this is a big moment for her. But she's also sad that she isn't able to like go out there anymore and be that brash young person that she wants to be. So I think there's a lot of that kind of emotion. It's not just a tear of, I think it's a mixed emotion tear, and it's beautiful that in that the story has evolved to that point over the season that one tear does mean so many different things at the same time.
So very powerful season. Beautiful choreographs, a lot of strong fight scenes, a lot of strong kind of plots, and expanding on like these characters. Bolin being disappointed that he can't metal bend, because like a few episodes he's trying to be like, yeah, I can metal bend, and he realizes he can't, and he feels kind of down. Ends up at the last minute being able to lava bend while trying to protect, and just like it's like, oh, I guess I just really had to be in it, like to learn how to lava bend.
Season 3 was definitely a way stronger season compared to season 2, but there is one thing that always bothered me, and something that's going to bother me in season 4 as well, is that Korra is always one way or the other weakened or indisposed. You never have a fight with her at her full power throughout in this entire season, because even when she's in the Avatar state, she's poisoned and weakened while fighting Zahir. And the same thing happens in like season 3 and season 4. Korra is at her weakest now.
Yeah. Well, I think with that is that it gives it a sense of stakes. And remember, she is still, to some extent, a young person. She doesn't have the wisdom of the ages. She's not like who's trained for her whole life for this. Well, she has in some regards, but she doesn't have the wisdom of the ages. She's lost a lot of her connection to the past. And I think it also gives the sense that, look, if she could just come in and like do everything, it'd be great, right? Like I think it's more noticeable now because she is older. I think with Aang it's a lot more excusable because he is 12. He is young. He can't just be the all-powerful, goes out and kicks butt. His hang-ups are things that kids would have hang-ups with, and that would prevent him from reaching the next level. He gets distracted easily. Those are the kinds of things, but that would prevent him from like going into God mode Avatar state, right? Because that was his like major hurdle, was getting into the Avatar state. And because he was like, well, you can't have like emotions, quote unquote, to get into the Avatar state. And I guess in the long run he does figure out another way to do it, and his past selves do help him figure that out. But with Korra, it's a lot like, well, Korra is strong, and if they just gave her the Avatar state, she would wreck everything, which doesn't make for an interesting story particularly.
Well, yeah, essentially, they gave it to her at the end of season 1, and then season 2 they get, okay, we made her a little too powerful, we need to underpower her.
Basically.
Well, that's the thing about that's what season 2 was a bit about. Is she was abusing it a little too much without fully realizing the ramifications of it, to the point where all the throughout, due to the whole events, she lost what she realized she could have used dearly, and ends up being like, oh, well, I've lost it, but then I still have to keep going. And just like the first Avatar, I just gotta keep going, build it anew.
Yeah, but like I said, I hate how all the seasons here, that's always what's going on, is that Korra's either underpowered, poisoned, or unconscious in all of her conflicts. Like, you never have her at her best. It always seems like she's becoming slowly a second player in her own show.
I guess. I think what it is that Avatar, I think Legend of Korra, I think actually maybe that's why season 2 is one of the weaker ones, is because it feels like it focuses too much on her. But I feel like a lot of the season 1, 3, and 4 are very much ensemble. It's very much grown into an ensemble show, like how the original one did. Aang was your main character, but it focused, because there was a lot fewer characters too, it focused very well on everyone else, and everyone felt like they weren't just there. They all felt like an equal member of the team. It's just that Aang had to do the big step. And I think also the part of the evolution of the show, and the evolution of, I guess, how people would be going in that time, is that people are getting stronger, right? Like, if you look at in the way technology is, look how kids can use like cell phones as super easily then, and look how like some adults who are like 4 or 5, 10 times their age can't. Like my nephew, he's like 5 and he's playing games on a cell phone.
I never would have done that. I didn't have a cell phone when I was 5.
I didn't even have a Game Boy when I was 5.
So it's things like that. So I feel like it feels like people are getting stronger, but I guess I'll segue into season 4, and towards the end of season 4 is that yes, people are still strong, and the whole point of season 4 is that there has to be a balance, but at the end of the day, she's still the goddamn Avatar, and she's still gonna be that one that will save people, and she goes around helping people.
I will debate with you on that when we get to the end of season 4.
So
season 4.
So season 4, balance. So it's time skip. It's 3 years later.
Everyone or 2?
3.
Yeah,
it's 3.
At this point, I think she's about 20, 21, Korra.
Something like that. I guess in the first episode of this, you basically find out that it's 3 years later. Everyone's sort of gone on. So there's Kuvira, who's going around basically trying to rebuild the Earth Nation after it fell into turmoil after the Earth Queen's assassination.
Kuvira was one of the soldiers at Zaofu, who saved Korra's father in one of the episodes in season 3.
Yeah.
So you do have sort of a mention of her.
Yeah.
And then she becomes more predominantly the main character in the season 4.
Well, antagonist. And then, so you find out about that. You find out the air nomads are going around helping people. You find out, there's a prince. They found the prince to take over the coronation once the Earth Kingdom has been Prince Wu down! And, he's one of those characters that starts off really annoying, but kind of grows on you as the season goes along, I'll admit.
He kind of reminds me of the Emperor from the Emperor's New Groove.
So much! I agree, 100%.
I think that's what they're playing on heavily.
Emperor Couscous versus...
That's
so good.
And, so it goes on. So you can sort of tell Kuvira is expected to, at Prince Wu's coronation, to basically give back control of the Earth Kingdom. And any smart viewer of television, or any normal viewer of television, knows that she's obviously not going to do that. So at this time you find out that Korra's been struggling with her bending. So she's not as strong as she used to be.
She was supposed to be at Republic City, and they end up finding out that, she didn't show up, but letters were still being sent around.
Yeah. And
she went on a soul-searching mission because she was still mentally and physically traumatized by her fight with Zahir.
Some ways, I think she wasn't so much going on a soul-searching mission as much she was sort of running away from her spirit self that was scaring her, and at some point she realized she had to confront it.
I think it was a bit of both. She was running away, but she was also trying to find herself
at the same time. But because when she first shows up in Republic City, she does get there within the time frame set. except for she sees her basically spirit avatar state self at the gate of the island or on one of the rocks on the island, and she basically turns around and it right away. Her bending is weakened. She isn't as strong as she used to be.
She's getting pummeled in the ring. She gets into like Fight Club rings and she gets pummeled.
No, actually, that's just one time.
Yeah.
Actually, it's that was just the one time. It makes it at the end of episode 1. It feels like she's been doing. That's what she's been doing.
No, it was not just the one time. It was also the time she tried to stop those burglars on that island.
No. I'm saying the whole Fight Club thing.
Oh.
No, but I'm saying like it seems like she's in a Fight Club kind of situation. But basically, after going on this soul searching / running away mission, she eventually decides to confront herself, and it leads her to this ring. She ultimately loses. She follows a spirit into the marsh. She meets Toph. Toph basically explains, well, there's still some of that metal in you. In an attempt to remove it, she struggles. So Toph, being Toph, is like, I'm not going to do it. You do it yourself. I'm not going to deal with this.
Old woman, old grandma Toph is so good.
Just as awesome as regular Toph.
So good.
Essentially, what Korra's going through is that she's still traumatized by her near-death experience with Zahir, and that part of her wants to keep the metal inside as an excuse to not ever be in that situation.
That's fairly obvious.
And it's also not the struggle of just the Zahir fight, but all of the conflicts that she's dealt with Amon, with Unalaq.
Yeah, the time in the swamp is actually really interesting because it reflects on all of her past villains.
Yeah.
They were all, how she should learn from them. They were all decent ideals, but they were all extremes.
And I think what was really neat about it as well is she ends up making her way to Zahir's prison again, who Zahir's still floating in cagey and stuff, and ends up having to confront Zahir, but Zahir being the teacher, still because he's the strongest.
Okay, so now we're just jumping around. There's a whole bunch of so she learns from Toph that they send the children to find her. The children find her. They come back.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Prince Wu gets kidnapped, and then a bunch of so there's a whole side story there. And then also, remember Otaku or whatever his name, Rio or whatever his name was? Yeah. He comes back, and he's leading so now you find out Republic City is okay with the spirits, and they tours in.
Because of Asami rebuilding, using future industries to rebuild the city around the vines and all that stuff.
But because of what Kuvira is doing with the spirit vines.
Okay. We're honestly jumping all over the place.
Well, you went to Rio.
Let's recap this. Prince Wu coronation, not giving back the throne. Varric comes back. At the coronation, he gets a spirit vine. He realizes that the spirit vine could be used to become an energy cannon weapon.
No. He realizes he could be used as an energy source, but it turns out when he does the tests, it becomes just a big cannon.
He realizes instead of as energy, it can also be used as a weapon. Kuvira wants it as a weapon. He actually shows some backbone and says, I don't want to do that. That's horrible. I don't want to make weapons.
I have this thing in the back of my head that's telling me stuff. Julie's like, I think that's your conscience.
Yeah. So basically, what is it?
Kuvira threatens him.
Oh yeah, so this leads to people getting kidnapped from the town?
Exactly, because she's messing around with the vines in the swamp.
For that, so the kids find Korra. Korra fights Kuvira in front of Zalfu.
Because she's trying, that's the final foothold before Republic City.
Yeah, and so that's the last place that she wants to unite the entire Earth Kingdom. She basically finds the big spirit tree, so she tries to take vines from that to make her energy cannon. That triggers the spirits in Republic City to basically kidnap a whole bunch of people, and Korra tries to go to Spirit World, but she can't because the hero's blocking her mentally. At least that's what she thinks. So she goes sees him, and he basically says, well, don't fear it. Basically jump into the belly of the beast.
You need to figure out what you've learned from those events, and you have to accept them.
Yeah.
So she ends up like, no, I'm still scared of it, but I'm accepting it now. Like they're part of my past, and I have to learn from it. So she basically gains the wisdom she needed to basically become stronger.
The thing I did like about Zahir is that he actually was repentant of what he did. He didn't realize, well, the consequences of my actions of this anarchist ideal have left the world in an even greater turmoil than before.
it's not that he was repentant of his actions in that sense. And he states it's like the enemy of my enemy is my friend in this case. And what his original ideal wasn't for a totalitarian state to evolve from the removal of the Earth Queen. He wanted people to help themselves, but he basically put in something worse, and he didn't want that. But I don't think he was repentant of his action of actually killing the Earth Queen to that extent. He did what he did, but he expected to be around to guide it the way he did, but because he got captured and because he failed, he wasn't. I really feel like he wasn't repentant of his actions in that sense. It's just that he was. This is not the outcome he wanted.
And due to his absence, a power vacuum got created, and then Kuvira jumped in.
But the thing is, even if he stayed, it being a guide would be against his own ideals, because he said, "I am just a man. I am nobody." His whole point was that there would be no leaders, there would be no guides. People would have to fend for themselves. Yeah. But because of the nature of people,
I don't mean guide in the actual sense of like lead. I mean, like, preventing, again, another, basically, I don't think taking over.
I don't think he would have let Kuvira get to the point of what happened, basically.
I don't think he really thought his plan through to begin with.
Well, that's mostly what all the villains are in this in this series. They're just like, I'm just going to do this.
Yeah, but I don't think he was, he isn't repentant for what he did. I don't think he's repentant in that sense. I think he regrets that his actions led to this, but I don't think he regrets the actions he took in particular. That's not what he wanted, so that's why he's like, I'll help you, Avatar, because it seems we have a common enemy. It's not like, I feel bad for what I did, I want to help you. It's more like, I didn't want someone else to take over instead. Zaofu gets taken over after, Korra loses against Kuvira, and so they go back to Republic City. At this point, they find...
and Varric escape
as well. They tell them about the super weapon. They also find out that Republic City is going to be attacked in a short amount of time. So they prepare for that, and then you meet a giant mech comes out of nowhere
with a giant spirit gun.
With a spirit gun cannon. They basically attack Republic City. There's a huge fight where they try to take down the mech, and Korra and team save the day, and a lot of redemption. Everywhere.
And due to all those events, it creates a third spirit portal in the middle of Republic City.
Yeah. So, thoughts on the season. Let's go from there now. I guess the Nazi analogy does seem apt to some extent.
Well, especially after they bring in that whole, they're getting rid of us from the cities because we're not earthbenders.
Yes. That's where it really becomes, to a head. But it's not to the... At first, it's not really it doesn't feel like it's a not, because I watched it all last week. I wasn't watching it when everyone was watching it. So I was hearing all these Nazi analogies.
Was it the educational camps? Oh, boy.
So as I'm going through that first part before, it's like, I can see totalitarian government, I don't see Nazi, and then until later on you find out I'm getting rid of this, you're not an earthbender or from Earth country, nation, get out kind of thing, or go to re-education camps if you don't agree with our ideals. Like I said, the great line, it's like when they take over Zaofu, and they're basically taking away the father and the brother goes, stop it, you're hurting my individuality. Kuvira is also helped by one of Sue's kids as well.
Batard Jr.
Who's in love with her. This season is really about, a lot of the seasons are pretty aptly named to some extent. I mean, Book 1, Air, she's trying to learn airbending. That doesn't really seem to be the goal. That could have been called something else, Equality or whatever as a season, but I feel like they had to call it Air.
I think
that's the next in the cycle.
I think it had to finish off what was the 3 books from the Last Airbender, which was, they didn't have the Air one.
Spirits, it feels like half of it is really about, spirits, but spirits just feel like they're there. Book 3, Change.
Most aptly named.
It's because the villains are trying to instill change. There is a big change that happens due to the actions of the Avatar. And balance, so a lot of these titles are aptly named, and balance really is the whole story, and the whole, this one actually is very well represented throughout the entire season of balance. Korra trying to find balance in herself based on her past experiences. Kuvira
trying to find balance
the Earth Nation. The Avatar trying to find balance in a new society where the Avatar isn't as required as in the past to keep the peace, because people have essentially, to some point, evolved as people to govern themselves in a certain way. And it all feels like everyone's trying to find balance in this season, and it really does sound like, it does feel like it actually does get achieved towards the end of it. So those are my thoughts on the season briefly kind of thing.
I think season 4 is a strong season. I love that we spend more time with Bolin in this season. His whole, being with Varric in enemy territory.
Best bromance ever is Bolin and Varric.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So good.
The whole Julie thing, you think she's a traitor, but nope, she's just faking it.
So at some point, basically, when they realize that Kuvira is about to... they realize that Kuvira is crazy, in a very funny scene, by the way. What is it? I think Bolin realizes after she tries to get him to talk Sue into letting her talk her into the fold, and then Varric realizes it with the spirit cannon, and they reach each other. It's like, I kind of realized something. Kuvira is batshit crazy. And they're like, yeah, when did you figure that out?
That was a great scene.
That's a great scene. And then they try to escape and then that escape sequence where the fight with the mechs. Julie kicks so much butt in that mech. Super awesome.
I love how Varric doesn't know how to use his own machine. He's like, who built this thing? You did, sir. So good.
Even Bolin with his lava bending is doing some crazy stuff too.
Oh, yeah, definitely. He's really I think Bolin is one of the characters who's evolved the most.
Absolutely. Out of all of the characters, he's done such a great job evolving.
Mako had an evolution, in my opinion, from season 1 to season 2, and then he kind of just stayed there.
I agree.
Bolin has really been discovering himself throughout the series, and I think he has some really great moments.
I'll put it this way: Mako is the least interesting character.
Oh god!
In this from Team Avatar, he's the least interesting character, even less than Julie, who has one expression most of the time.
Julie's actually an interesting character. Yeah, she is Varric's sidekick, but she really comes around when she starts showing off her individuality. Then you find out, oh, she's been in love with Varric this whole time.
Yeah,
and the way Varric expresses his emotion, he tries to say, there was this cow back on the farm, and I didn't really appreciate her, and then she died, and I missed her. And then the circus came and took me.
But Bolin, he's sort of like the Sokka of the group. To some extent, he's the comedic relief, but he's still very a capable fighter.
When it comes to the Sokka of the group, I think Varric and Bolin are together the Sokka.
Absolutely, I agree.
I would say,
because Varric has all the funny lines and everything, and Bolin has all the seriousness that you had before, and except this time the bending's there.
The fact of the matter is, I think Bolin is the best. He's the realist of the group,
he's
not being an idiot.
He's very naive to some extent, but he also... it's hard to put him as a realist, because he doesn't realize a lot of what's going on.
Yeah, you're right.
So it's kind of hard to put him in that regard. He's very naive, and he tries to believe the best in people. He can have smart thoughts when put to the task. I think the more realist is Mako to some extent. But he's also very boring. Asami's very interesting because she is a non-bender, but she's very smart, she's very capable in fighting, and she still designs some pretty cool stuff.
And I like the growth that that they portrayed her in this season, where she's basically she starts by I can't forgive you for what you did. How dare you?
To her father,
while in prison, but then is able to grow, realizing that okay, I sort of understand why he did it. I don't want to lose. I don't want to regret not being able to talk to my father later on. So you see a lot of that being expressed, where at one point she's like, I can't forgive you, but I want to. And then they agree to play a game of Pai Sho, which is this world's kind of chess.
Yeah.
And that was a really strong kind of emotional bind or tie, especially given the events that you saw Sato do in the season 1.
He does come back, he does help, and unfortunately he does have to pay the ultimate price
to save his daughter.
To save everyone at the same time too.
And then of course you have more of Toph in this season finally.
Yeah.
And I just love Toph in this series. She's just especially when she comes in and rescues her family, all the stuff she says with Korra. It's still Toph, and it's you had cranky tomboy child Toph and old grandma Toph. It's just like, she just regressed back to the same character.
Well, let's put it this way, because, like, you know, because you see in flashbacks when she's police chief, she's serious when she needs to be, but it's like how do I put it? So, when she's a kid, she doesn't care. She's like, oh yeah, I get to fight, woohoo, yeah! And then she's like, oh, I gotta be chief of police. And so she's very boring. And then she becomes old and is like, oh yeah, I can do whatever I want because I'm no longer responsible. And she's basically going around and she's like the most brutally honest of everybody.
Side note, I love how Korra's trying to ask for stories from her perspective, and again, she's blind, so she's just like, yeah, I think I bent a plane, and I think I did this, I learned metal bending.
Sokka said a thing.
It's so good.
Toph is definitely keeps up with her character in this one, and it was great that they brought her back in this season.
And the exact same outfit, too, of all things.
Well, yeah. I mean, like, when you're police chief, you can't. It's like, you know, you can go back to wearing what you feel like wearing when you're not.
And, like, one of the last things I want to say about Season 4, like I said, I enjoyed this season, but the final confrontation, I did not enjoy. There was this lack of an epic feel to it. Yeah, they're fighting a giant mech, but it's not, you don't get to see the Avatar at her full power. It's like the closest you get to see to that is when she stops the cannon that hits her, but there's no real epic fight.
I agree, actually. Season 2 felt that there was a lot more of a grand battle, a grand defense as to what needed to be done and how much she had to expand her spirit to try to do this. This one, the battle was great, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the battle, the struggle, and the whole, like, getting into the mecha and dealing with Kuvira. But compared to the fight in Season 2?
Or even Season 3 was Zahir.
No, I think the Season 4 was a bit stronger than Season 3 with Zahir, but not as grand as the Season 2 battle.
Really? I don't know, because
the end battle.
No, I'm trying to remember the battle.
Plot.
Because I feel like I'm like, it's just basically two big things hitting each other, kind of like, blah, blah, blah. Whereas in this one, it felt like, well, one, stakes were higher. She's using a spirit cannon. Everyone is involved in this fight, even the kids. They have to come up with creative ways of defeating this monster, because they can't metal bend it because it's made out of platinum. They are trying to do lava bending, they're trying to use paint, they're flying around, they're trying to, like, push buildings onto it. The stakes are high. It's an intense battle.
Here's the thing where I'm going to disagree on that. The fact of the matter is, yeah, it's an intense battle, but it's more like, let's throw stuff at this thing that's not going to do anything. There's no epicness to it.
I do like the struggle. I do like that everybody's getting involved and stuff like that. But when you come down to it, the battle is needing to be ended with Korra. And it's not as grand as the other fights. It's really well done that everybody has their little, like, attempt, like, what's the kid's name who does the... Milo does a great job with his, like, expressions and stuff like that. Given, like, the past seasons, he's just, like, a fart joke. Literally a fart joke airbender.
But now he's a man.
Now he's a man. There's even, like, a little Crush episode. But, like, you're seeing they're all getting involved. But the final fight, although still really well done, I just felt that it's not as powerful.
So what are you defining as the final fight in this particular...
Korra dealing with Kuvira in the fight, and like it explode, like everybody doing their part to stop the mech, but then the fight's still going on, and it's still not as grand of a battle.
Well, let me put it this way: you had you weren't satisfied with the ending of Season 1. You think like you maybe needed to extrapolate a few things, have Korra deal with an episode with having to deal with
the lost.
Yeah.
What I feel about this is that this is a great fight, but this should not have been the final fight. There should have been some epic confrontation of Korra with Kuvira as a last stand, something truly big, something that can really test the limits of her power in the Avatar state, like we had with her fighting. Even that's why I brought up Zahir, because she had to go Avatar state to be a match for him.
Even if it was triggered forcefully.
Exactly. Aang versus the Fire Lord. That was like an epic fight.
That also had a very anticlimactic ending. First, I will bring up.
I'm not going to deny that, but that fight lasted, 2.5 episodes? That was an epic confrontation between the two. That's what I wanted to see here. Yes, the mech was great, but the mech, I could equate it to taking back Ba Sing Se or bringing down the airship. It is a part of the final confrontation. It should not have been the final battle.
Good comparison. No, if you compare it to the season 3 of The Last Airbender compared to season 4 of Korra, they do not. They're not at the same level.
There should have been another fight going on at the same time. Yes, you're right. There is like a lot of danger there. There's a lot of urgency, but it just lacks something.
I did not think so personally. I think that as the battle goes, it was intense. First of all, it required everybody basically in Team Avatar and Team Avatar expanded group, like Team Avatar Unlimited, I guess you would have to say. Yeah, go ahead.
No, that I actually wanted to mention that a lot of the Team New Avatar was almost put in the back burner a bit for some character, like Mako. You get he gets his moment, but he's really, other than being the bodyguard, they really don't use him well enough. He sort of like tries to expand the story of the prince, but not much more than that. He ends up like just taking a backseat. I find that they all kind of split up and end up not being like the group that it was in The Last Airbender, where they are together working to try to go forward.
Okay,
so you have a lot of them just kind of split up, and they have their own little like new groups, like Bolin and Varric, and they start building the relationship. They bring back Julie, and Julie builds a relationship with Varric, and you have those characters being like kind of finalized and fleshed out. You have the sister, the metal bending sisters, the chief of police and all that, and they're doing their big moment and taking things out, and especially when there's a moment where Toph is like, "Oh, we should let the kids handle it," and it's like, okay, sure, you still got everyone else dealing with this too, and it's expanding a lot on everyone helping out, which is still great. But you lose a lot of what, like, the, like, Team New Avatar.
Okay, so Avatar The Last Airbender happens over the equivalent of one summer. So, yeah, it feels like they're always together because for that short period of time, it's just them, and it's like 3 months, right? This is happening over several years, and let's put it this way: did you keep a lot of together, your group of friends from when you were 16 to when you were 21?
I'm the worst example. I've moved too often.
Well, no, but I'm saying it's like so at the end of high school to the end of college, right? Let's use that as a primary term. Your core group of friends versus the core group of friends you have later on. You're all separated. You're still friends. You still do things together every now and then, but because you are now adults, because now you have lives of your own, you all have jobs of your own, you can't exactly all be together all the time all together, but you are still part of that team. And it is shown in the episode when the prince gets kidnapped, or the king, I guess, because of the coronation. Respect the brooch. They do still function together very well as a team, but it's also, they all do have different responsibilities now. They are older. It isn't like they aren't kids anymore to some extent.
To add to your point, the fact is, at this point in the story, Team Avatar is broken up because they're not needed. Once Korra comes back into the picture and things start to move forward, Team Avatar gets together to do, Team Avatar stuff.
Yeah.
So it's a case of like you were saying, when during Aang's time, they're always together because they always had a mission to do. Mm. And even afterwards in the comics, they start splitting up and doing their own things, but they come together when there's a mission to do. Same thing here in Korra.
But I still think, I guess it's intense as a battle. Well, so obviously they couldn't do anything bigger, budget limitations, obviously. But for what they did have budget-wise and what they still managed to involve, I think all the characters, it was an intense fight. Most of the other mechs were taken out by Varric's EMP that he figures out how to make, which is hilariously awesome. It's like, if I do this, I hope it works! EMP. That's awesome. How would I put it? The balance is, it's not about having this huge epic fight, right? It's about finding, how would I put it? Kuvira I guess Korra didn't really want to take down Kuvira like hardcore, and you kind of see it in the middle of the season already that in Avatar state, without the psychological trauma, she would have taken out Kuvira. It's just that psychological trauma prevented her. So Kuvira was never really a particular one-on-one alone threat, right? Like, that's the problem you had. Either they would have had to depower Korra, like they did, and which you had a problem with, or like they did in season 3. The only reason she was struggling against Zahir is because she was basically fighting off poison at the same time. She was also in a rage state because she couldn't control herself, and so she was fighting sloppily, and he was taking advantage of that. Otherwise, if she was at full strength Avatar mode, Zahir would have been done in a second.
Oh, you want a suggestion for something they could have done that would have been interesting?
Yeah, I'm totally...
Alright, in the last scene you have Kuvira firing the giant spirit gun, right?
Yeah.
What if you did something like all that spirit energy flowed into Kuvira, she became corrupted, and Korra had to fight her full strength? Something like that.
If they were able to establish that could have been, like, bunched together, or maybe she was able to like make a minor mecha suit that was able to encompass that energy, I guess I could see that going, but like I don't think they had enough time.
Yeah,
to
no,
be able
I
to
agree.
set that up.
I don't think spirit energy works that way.
Well, I'm just.
No, apparently it moves a big mecha thing though, and shoots
No,
cannons.
that's it powers a big mecha.
But I'm just spitballing ideas. I'm just saying, had we had the mecha fight going on, as well as a personal fight for Korra, that would have been more interesting for me.
It would have been neat too if like Korra could have done her spirit thing.
But you're basically asking for a 26 episode series where they can develop that Kuvira is the general, but there are also other capable earthbenders capable of moving that kind of mech. And also,
I'm pretty sure if Kuvira wasn't doing it, somebody else would be piloting that mech. It didn't seem... She seemed like the way she was piloting it was using metal bending by bending metals inside the suit that weren't platinum.
Yeah, no, she was, well, the orbs were basically controlling things.
What was it, like metalite metal?
No, it was
platinum.
No, the thing was made out of platinum.
No, her control things.
The orbs were probably just made out of a metal, bendable metal.
Oh, okay.
Nothing particularly special, I
Maybe
think.
it was mercury.
No, maybe. It did seem to be liquid at some point.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. Because when I saw that, it's like, oh, she's going to use the trick that Zahir used last season to fight the Avatar.
I guess. Honestly,
At this point, we're going to have to agree to disagree.
I still think you guys are crazy. I'm just going to put that out there. I don't know what I think what you're wanting is that it's weird because you're sort of, what I understand is like you want everyone to be involved in the fight, but you wanted it to seem like there was more going on than just a mech fighting in an empty city. You essentially wanted what was sort of going on in the end of Avatar: The Last Airbender, where the Fire Nation was fighting off against, like, the Water Nation was involved, and Team Avatar was doing their own little thing, and Sokka gets into one of the airships and, like, takes out a bunch of them, and Toph is running around with metal mecha suit that she kind of made herself and fighting.
What I wanted was seeing the Avatar at her best. I feel we didn't really see that here, aside from her blocking a shot.
I think that, I guess it depends on what you define the Avatar being at her best, right? Because if you define it at her being at full strength of her Avatar powers, so if you define her power as basically her using her elemental bending power to attack everything and do some crazy damage, yeah, sure, we didn't see that. But if you define it as her using the wisdom that comes with being the Avatar, being able to bend all the elements, being the person that brings balance to the spirit world and the human world, and being that bridge and all that things, I think at some point, like, it's not about basically her being able to fight the best, but her realizing that it's not about killing or beating up someone, and she's learned throughout, and she's admitted herself, it's like, old me, I'd be first to fight, but now I feel like there's other ways to deal with it. That's her growing up, that's her growing wise, and that's to some extent
becoming the Avatar,
becoming more balanced as a person.
The problem with that is that we're talking about a TV show, an action show. Having that as your conclusion lacks the epicness of a series finale. You want to go out on a high note. If you go out on your final episode like, hey, let's talk talk this out.
I will say this. They didn't have I would agree with you as it wasn't as strong of a high note as the season 3 of The Last Airbender, but it was still very well done. You got the points. You realize that she saw herself in Kuvira. It gets explained and then realize, holy shoot.
Seeing herself in Kuvira, that started coming out of nowhere to me.
No,
they introduced, that was basically the whole implication when she couldn't throw the boulder on her and to crush her, and she sees herself on Kuvira, and she realizes as she goes along that Kuvira is trying to, in her mind, she's just misguidedly going about trying to bring balance to the world. Because when you look at it, she's not evil. Her actions, to some extent, aren't evil. Like, she doesn't believe she's the bad guy. She doesn't believe she's doing, to a lot of extent, she doesn't believe she's doing things because she has to be a necessary evil. She believes that what she is doing is right. She believes
and it's saving the nation that has had a major problem for years.
I will put that up for debate because towards the end, she's doing a lot of terrible things, including trying to kill her fiance.
Yeah, towards the end, yes.
She's not going to admit she's evil, but she has crossed that line.
Which is what gets that evolves.
But I'm saying that whole point is that at some point she crossed the line in the wrong direction, but up until like the whole mentality behind why she initially went to stop the uprisings in Ba Sing Se, right? She didn't go there with the intention of taking over initially. It's just she went there to restabilize, and as she went along, she realized that, okay, there's a deeper rooted issue here. It's time to unite and blah, 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 blah. Kind of thing. And I'm not saying that her actions are good either, but I feel like how she goes about it is not that I'm doing this so I can be all powerful and rule everything kind of thing. It's just I want the best for my people. And it's sort of what, like, I guess the Nazis sort of did. It's like in that regards as well. And she kind of does cross that line, but I think she was aiming at the beginning to be sort of like, it's like, we don't need the Avatar anymore. We can take care of ourselves. But at some point when you become mad with power, you become mad with power.
And that's why the Avatar is still a necessary function in the society where it's kind of going, whoa, I think you're going a little crazy.
So the fact of the matter is, like other things in season 3, I think they could have better developed the similarities between Kuvira and Korra, because to me it just started... Season 4, thank you. It felt to me that they could have done it better. They could always do it better. No, because the thing is, to me, maybe some people saw it better than I did, but to me it felt like, yeah, you're really kind of shoehorning this in. Kuvira is developed, but nowhere developed to that point.
Which is something I want to talk about, comparing the Last Airbender versus Korra.
Well, we didn't talk about the most important part of season 4.
We'll get to that.
The wedding?
Oh no, that's pretty boring.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was a nice wedding, but Korra and Asami end up together. Yay!
I liked it. I'm fine with it. A lot of people are making a stink. I don't. I think I have no problem with that being shown more and more into the mainstream. I think it needs to be there. Not so much that it needs to be forced in, but I do like that. Like, I don't want people to make it look like it's, you're just doing that because you want shock. No, it's part of society now. We're dealing with a lot of that in real life. I don't see this being a problem. Yep. Like, this is really something that needs to be. And I like that this is coming from a kid's show too. Yeah. Even though that it's not full blown done. Like, they're not kissing at the end. Yeah. Although there's a lot of fan art that's doing that. It's showing that no, these two people do care about each other. They're going to further go on a trip and further expand on what they've realized. And I do want to see more of that going forward. Done right. I don't want it just be like, yeah, these two together.
Yeah.
Done right. And I think it was done well enough in this that it wasn't so forced. It wasn't so like down your throat.
I'll put it this way. It was done in such a way that if you don't want to see it, you don't have to see it. If you want to see it, it's totally there. And so you're up to your own decisions. Like, they leave it to your decision if you want to believe it that way. I mean, unless if you go into the expanded things and go like, yeah, the creator said totally that's what happened. Yeah. But if you're just watching the show for the show, you can go to the end of the show and be like, oh, it's awesome that they're friends that can hold hands, or, hey, guess they're together now.
As for me, when I first saw it, to me, my first thought was pandering. I legitimately thought this was just pandering to the online audience. I gave it a bit more thought, and I still feel that to an extent, but the final message, like you said, Kevin, it's very good. It's, you're trying to show this is part of our society now. It's a powerful message. It's a good message. I just feel it could have been done better. I feel like going to the show, there's only like maybe a handful of tips that were suggesting some romance building. To me, it looked like it was a good friendship that was building, hence why I believed it felt more like pandering because of the online shipping community. Had this been done, in my opinion, had they developed the romantic feelings of it better, had they shown that better, I would have liked
They're
it
not
more.
allowed. They're really not allowed.
Oh, I know that.
It's American television. Honestly, I'll put it this way. They can't do it more than how they did it to some extent because of who controls everything in television right now. Who the people who do don't like that kind of thing. So you're not allowed to show that kind of thing overtly to kids.
Well, obviously,
Even,
it's Nickelodeon.
but I'll put it this way. They can't make it obvious that way, but I was watching the show called Wizard vs. Aliens, okay? It's a BBC show. Well, a children's BBC show. And in the end of the second season, one of the main characters comes out, but not like, he doesn't ever say he's gay. He's like, so why didn't you ever go on a date with that girl? I don't think I'll ever go on a date with a girl. Oh. And then all the implication is like, maybe you'll be able to go on that date. So it's kind of the thing where they can never actually say it, but they can always imply it. Like that one comes out of nowhere especially, but it's the kind of thing like they have to kind of shoehorn it in to some extent. But I feel like here they do it subtly enough that it really is, if you go back, and honestly, I was watching season 3 to see how, with some like knowing that this is sort of what was going to happen as well, and you can sort of see the subtle hints that they put in there in the way they do it. And I don't think if you go back as far as season 1, definitely not on their mind. Season 2, probably not as much on their mind. Season 3, you can see that maybe that's where they started it a bit, when those characters were interacting a bit. It wasn't your typical, how I would say, as a guy saying this, it was your typical female-female interaction. But
the fact is, to me, what it looked like is, now they had no boys to fight over, and these two girls can finally, like, just be legit friends.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it seemed like to me, and then they put in this romance. So, here, I have nothing against this romance. I think, like I said, I think the message is great. I think it could have been better done, but there is the limitations of Nickelodeon. The final question is, was this done as to do a progressive message, or were they trying to gain notoriety through infamy?
Honestly, knowing that the people who, not knowing them personally, but knowing the kinds of stuff they've written, I honestly feel like this was a straight up progressive message. I don't think it was just shock value. They did not need shock value. If they wanted shock value, they would do it in another way. I think part of it also maybe was to be progressive too. I mean, you can say that their friendship was developing after there was no more boys to fight over, but I feel like their friendship sort of was developing over the entire, since season 1, even when they were fighting over boys to some extent. Asami basically chose Team Avatar over her father to some extent. In season 2, there is that whole weirdness with Korra, and Asami's not really much in season 2, to be honest. And then when they're back in season 3, some time has passed. They are getting along a bit better, and it feels like, that friendship is more like they're good old friends now, maybe more. And like I said, I think you can see it how you want to see it, but I think it really is truly a progressive message that they intended to put in there, and not a shock value, we need people. Because it's the end of your show, and it's not like, then you could say, oh, it's a big FU to to Nickelodeon, but if they wanted to do something like that, they would do something, I think, way more overt, while still being within restrictions, and make it way more obvious, because, I think they would have just made it way more overt if they wanted to pander to, not pander, but make it a shock value kind of thing.
Ferric and Bullen. Ow! No, I think you're right. This is not pandering. They did this properly, given what they could do. And those who could interpret it as being pandering, but I do see it for what it is, and they did a good job given what they had, what they could do. And no, I think the message is good. It's proper. And that I like that it's just going in that direction for cartoons. It's going in that direction as a message to younger audiences, younger kids, that like this is not something that is ultimately bad.
Yeah.
It's something that can happen.
Yeah.
And I think that was great.
I guess
Just to explain the differences I found is that Although 3 seasons, The Last Airbender was a whole story. The whole story was the struggles against the Fire Nation, the struggle of dealing with the major events that took out the air nomads, that had to build up the Avatar, had to go through all the training and the expansion. You built up this group together. Yeah, it's in the span of like 3-4 months for all 3 seasons, but you really had that build up that worked really well with that, but you had a singular enemy. Yes, there was a few villains combined together and a few kind of like sub-villains that helped out with stuff, but it was essentially the Fire Lord that was the enemy, and that was the struggle that they had to overcome. That was a solid story. They had that all going on, and that worked really well. In Korra, because of how the episodes and how it was produced were done, you had a very, like, every season was like an evil of that season as opposed to a strong build-up. And I think that's why you got situations like season 2 not really working really well after the season 1 stuff, a bit of the like going back and forth stuff, and for me kind of the group not being
Always together.
all together as opposed to when it was in The Last Airbender. So you do get that big difference, but yes, you do have a more mature series. I can't remember The Last Airbender actually dealing with death. Like, who dies in The Last Airbender? I can't remember off the top of my head.
There's a lot of assumed death.
Exactly. But in Korra, bam! The Queen.
Combustion Girl.
The Combustion Girl. Just the first season and the 2 brother. Just so much, like, boom, really dark themes, really, like, very struggling ideas, and just how much more mature it is. So that really, like, a lot stronger than its predecessor, but not as tied up as The Last Airbender.
That's due to a lot of the production issues.
Exactly.
But also, I'll put it this way. I feel like season 1 of... Okay, so there was no overarching plot because they didn't know if they would ever get multiple seasons.
Understood.
Season 1 was a complete story.
Even then, I still like... It's complete, but only because they had to tie up everything in their mind. I feel like they could have gone away with a situation like season 1, where I think in season 1 they weren't super sure they were going to get multiple seasons, but they had put all these threads in there, and then it turned out that they were getting picked up for multiple seasons. And so that's why 2 and 3 are much stronger, but also seem like way more, like 2 and 3 seem way more connected as a season than 1 to 2. 2 to 3 is way more in the Last Airbender, but it still ends on a note that's good. They haven't completed their mission. There could be more, but if it ended right here, you still feel like the character has had a short character arc, but not his full character arc, but it still feels like a full character arc, but within the larger character arc.
I think what they should have done is they knew they were getting 2 or 3 seasons after season 1. They should have found a way to better incorporate the characters and villains to make it a much more, make your 1 season story, but make it better in the overarching theme. Maybe have Vaatu Unalaq happen at the end of season 3 and slowly introduce the Red Lotus as a secondary villain going on at the same time.
Possible.
Yeah. Like, the thing is, at this point, we know they had 3 seasons. They could have done the epic story again, but they chose to do single season stories. And I find that, quite frankly, that doesn't work as well for this franchise as the epic story.
It depends, I guess. I feel like it works in a sense that you do get to see a lot more of the world, and you get to see a lot more of the different types of, like, organizations that are possibly out there. I mean, but it makes very little sense that there be some kind of, like, after the, like, when was, like, it's like saying World War III is imminent, but most people, okay, how would I put this? No one is really willing to rise up to that kind of level that the Fire Lords brought in, like, the past years, right? And it is so soon afterwards that no one would try to go as crazy.
Yeah.
It's hard to explain. But I think an overarching plot is something you sort of can do, but it's also like, I don't feel like they felt locked down into 2. Like, the only seasons that feel really connected are 3 and 4. And I feel like those are the only 2 seasons I think they knew they were getting for sure this many amounts.
Yeah.
And I still feel like season 2, it's like, you might get a third season, but we still have to fix what we did in season 1. And so that kind of led to a whole bunch of weirdness. Overall, I don't know. I feel like the short overarching stories did work because they did bring elements. What happened in season 2 did technically affect what happened in season 3. At the end of season 3, what did happen did technically affect season 4.
Oh, yeah,
and it did bring it along.
That's not up for debate, but the thing is, you don't get to build that level of pressure, that level of when we get to the climax, it feels that much more amazing, like we did with Avatar: The Last Airbender. You had a lot of ups and downs in Avatar. You had winning this battle, but you haven't won the war. You had, well, we lost this battle, now we move into season 3 where we're trying to get ourselves back together. It's the rise and fall of the hero to the inevitable victory.
I guess.
Korra just had villains of the week.
Well, of the season, but I feel like that you have to try something different as well. Because at the end of the day, if it was it would just be people saying, well, that was basically Avatar: The Last Airbender again, and lightning doesn't always strike twice.
Well, the fact of the matter is, it doesn't have to be Avatar again, as long as they change the themes and what they're doing. I'm just saying, they could, we're going to be saying this all day, they could have done it better. They could have done a more overarching plot that better brought things together and then gave a better climax.
Okay, well, if I said what I wanted to say, we just end up in the argument again about season 3. I feel like that the end of season 3, because of it's 3 years of them, it's 3 months for them, but it's 3 years of them going along. There is this big battle of mostly Aang running away, and then at the end he basically says, hey, avatars, help me out. Boom, bending gone, you're done, and that was it, right? And that kind of, I feel like, cheapened a whole bunch of what happened. And
I disagree. I think it was a very good fight. It was leading up to this. You knew from the beginning of the series that Aang would fight the Fire Lord, and it was, quite frankly, leading up to this. Yes, he needed the Avatar state to do it, and yes, the Lion Turtle thing was a bit of a out-of-nowhere kind of ability, but it also showed that Aang went out and found another way.
Although I do love that kind of ties in later with the whole story about how the lion turtles and explain more of the story of the original. So I do like that they're always pulling back that information, and it does do a full circle of all that information.
Well, is there anything else from season 4 we want to cover?
Oh no, we were just discussing overall, I actually think that having the different villains per season does allow them to do, at least creatively, try a lot more different things, and it still gives them a lot of, it doesn't constrain them, right? Because at the end of the day, you sort of knew, okay, so she has to fight the big bad at the end, but there's a lot in the middle that could have happened that was very different, and it feels like it condensed a lot of what happens in The Last Airbender into a season. Obviously, there are some issues with trying to do that too, but yeah, I feel like at the end of the day, how do I put it? You couldn't do this kind of, not this part, how they did this, you couldn't do it as a full, epic arc, I feel. But, it was still a fun ride, to some extent.
No doubt about it.
I mean, as much as I say season 1 has a poor ending, I still think you should pretty much... I would say the only season you should skip is season 2.
Except for the one.
Except for the 2-parter, but otherwise, you should definitely check out the show. I give it my seal of approval. Definitely go out there and watch it. It could use some love.
I give it a rating of, I would say, 9 out of 10 Julies. Varric being an awesome character from season 2 to 4, so I still think you should go see through the whole season.
You should have said 9 out of 10. Julie, do that thing.
Do that thing. Julie, do the thing! So. It's still a really good series. They still got a lot of the elements that were made Avatar, the Legend, the whole Avatar series solid. Yeah, we've been back and forth on a lot of elements. It's still one of the greatest story IPs that they've been able to create. They still fleshed out a lot of the elements in there, and it's worth watching. See The Last Airbender, see the Legend of Korra, all 7 seasons, and even the book material. It's just it's worth it. It gets every emotion that you need, and it's a good, full story.
As for me, I would give Legend of Korra a B+.
Like how we're all different ratings.
No, he's just ruining the rating system. That is all. Way to go, Peter.
Well, you gave it a seal of approval. I gave it a rating out of 10.
I was going to give it my rating.
You were there. Never mind.
Yeah, I was going to give it my rating now.
B+.
So I definitely...
I'm not
As much as I've griped on certain parts of the show, it's definitely a good watch. It's definitely something you should go out there and check out. It's definitely something for everybody. I would give it... Oh, man, you kind of stole my rating with Julie. I would give it 7 out of 10. I didn't know I could lava bend.
Not talk. You're on the south.
So, Avatar, Avatar, The Legend of Korra. Go out there, watch it. Those were our opinions on the show.
I didn't get a chance to do my opinion. You just cut me off.
And we're done!
And we're done. So, see you guys later. All right, cool. That was Geeking Out at the Tower podcast. Go on.
Go on.
Keep it short, because he took up all your time.
Alright, just give me a second. Because now you just ruined my train of thought. Essentially, I really liked Korra. It's a better show for an older audience. I don't know if it's as kid-friendly as Avatar: The Last Airbender, but definitely worth watching. A lot of fun. A few too many romance subplots, in my opinion, but great show. I would give this show 8 Variks.
Out of
10.
You gotta be more specific.
I give this show 8 Variks out of 10.
You could have messed it up, because, Varric does screw it up a lot. Could have been out of 12.
Yeah, or it could have been 8 Variks out of 5. Come on, Peter, you gotta be specific.
You got 4 to lose a few Julies. I think you're just weak, sir.
So those are our thoughts on Avatar: The Legend of Korra. Join us in the next segment where I will be giving you our info.
Do that thing!
And that was episode 9 of Geeking Out at the Tower podcast. And today we talked about Avatar: The Last Airbender and The Legend of Korra. As usual, you can find all of our information on our website at goattcast.wordpress.com. We would love it if you sent us an email detailing how right I was and how wrong Kevin and Peter were. And you can send that email to goattcast@gmail.com. You can also send us a good old tweet on Twitter at goattcast. You can also find us on Facebook where you can send us comments, like us. We don't bite. It's awesome over there. And you can find that at www.facebook.com/GOATTcast. You can also subscribe to us on iTunes. We always love getting new subscribers. You can also rate us on iTunes and just look up Geeking Out at the Tower podcast in the iTunes search bar. I was your host, Andrew, and today I was joined by
Kevin, Peter.
Thanks for listening and have a good time.
Andrew, do that thing!